It's time for Donald Trump to pack his bags and go home. Go home.
You're going to be watching some very good television tomorrow night. Very good television.
Good day, everybody. It's past 1:30 p.m. in Manila, 7:30 p.m. in Honolulu, 9:30 p.m. in San Francisco, and 12:30 in the morning in New York. As of this moment, voting is officially closed in the United States. Will Republican President Donald Trump get 4 more years at the White House, or will another Democrat, Joe Biden, take his seat at the Oval Office? Using the combined forces of News 5, the Philippine Star, Business World, and Bloomberg TV Philippines, One News will give you the latest on the ground, explain the facts, and dissect the data. This is our special coverage of the 2020 U.S. presidential elections. Now we go back to our earlier map. This map is provided by Reuters. This will not give you the official results. It's too early in the day. What it will give you are projections based on reports coming in and collated and then compiled by Reuters. Again, when we refer to the map, we are looking at 2 colors, blue, of course, for the Democrats and red for the Republicans. The depth of the color, when it's a heavier red, that means that there's a significant lead for the Republican candidate. And when there's a heavier blue, that means it's, of course, a more significant lead for the Democratic candidate, Joe Biden. So this map gives you a quick peek at how the election count is moving so far. As you can see, a lot of the coastal states are blue, consistently blue. For example, California, Washington, and I think that's Oregon over there. And here on the East Coast, you have states like New York, Maine, and I think, I'm not sure if this is Virginia. And if you notice, the red areas dominate what they call Middle America, or the heartland of the United States. Now, I'd like to drill down into some of the states that gave the swing votes in 2016. These are the states that you may want to watch out for in the next few hours, because where they will vote in 2020 may determine the final count of the Electoral College. For example, Florida was a key player in 2016. Florida has 29 electoral votes. So far, it looks like it's light red. What that means is that Donald Trump has a slight lead in the counting in Florida. Again, we have to emphasize these are not final counts. These are just leads that they have so far. So it could still change either way. Okay, that's the first swing state. The other swing state we're looking at is up here, Pennsylvania, which has 20 electoral votes. Pennsylvania was also instrumental in 2016, shifting from 2012's Democratic vote to 2016's Republican vote with 20 electoral votes. Then you have Ohio, right beside Pennsylvania, with 18 electoral votes. It's a deeper red, which means that Trump has a better margin of victory so far there. Michigan over here used to be as well, a Democratic state at least in the 2012 presidential elections before they swung to the Republicans in 2016. Michigan has 16 electoral votes. Wisconsin has 10 electoral votes. You can also see that it does appear to be light red. The same goes with Iowa over here with 6 electoral votes. Now, the deeper blue areas you would notice are Illinois over here, Virginia, New York State, Vermont, and here is Colorado with 9 electoral votes. This is New Mexico. Nevada is turning out so far to be light red. In 2016, Nevada voted for the Democratic Party, but now so far it's turning light red. California, as you can see here, is deep blue with 55 electoral votes, Oregon with 7, and Washington State with 8 electoral votes. So that's a quick look at how it's shaping so far. Again, like we said, these are not final figures. We're not talking about actual electoral votes yet. We're only talking about projections based on the votes that have come in and have been counted. Also, it may be important to point out that you're looking at a huge amount of mailed-in votes, which will still have to be counted after the counting of the in-person votes. We're looking at what, 93 million mailed-in votes as of Sunday, which is a record in the United States. I think it's around 5 times or maybe even 6 times higher the number of mailed-in votes in 2016. So those votes may be instrumental in changing a lot of things or a lot of the colors among these 50 states. Okay, now let's check back in with News 5 correspondent Dale Rivera, who is still at the U.S. Embassy for the Election Watch Party. Dale, what's the latest at the embassy?
And as of the moment, the Election Watch Party at the U.S. Embassy has ended. But officials of the U.S. Embassy, as well as local officials that we were able to see during the watch party, are still awaiting for the result. Embassy officials said that results might be in before the day end here in the Philippines. So that's probably early morning in the United States. So by then, we will be able to know if it's another Democrat president who will be in the White House by next year, or if President Donald Trump will stay as the president of the United States. Ed?
Okay, Dale, for those who are not familiar with the term watch party, what exactly is a watch party?
Yes, and a watch party is something that the U.S. Embassy holds during an election. It's where monitors are placed around the halls of the venue, either in a hotel or for this year within the U.S. Embassy compound. Monitors, television sets that monitors TV stations in the United States are all flashed, where we're all streamed, where exit polls are being flashed, or initial, partial and unofficial tally of results are being shown to those invited in the watch party. Previous watch parties. During the previous watch parties, there were actually a festive type of parties. But for this time, it was a tamed down party where there are just trivia questions. We were able to mingle with other embassy officials and other local officials who are invited to the watch party. Ed?
Okay, Dale, let me see if I got this right. What they're saying is that by the end of our day here in Manila, they may have the actual results of the elections. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right, Ed. That's what U.S. Embassy officials told us, that the results might come just before the day end. So they're hoping to see the result, or they're waiting if whoever will win this 2020 U.S. presidential elections. They're eagerly waiting who will be their next top diplomat. Ed?
Okay, well, I asked that because some reports state that there are fears that it may take several days before a final count is able to be brought in, because of the fact that you have so many mail-in votes that still have to be counted. And a lot of the states do not prioritize the mail-in votes versus the in-person votes. So there's a concern na medyo matatagalan pa to when they start counting the 93 million mailed-in votes, and that's a number coming from Sunday pa. It may have increased in the last few days.
Yes, that's right, Ed. But what the U.S. Embassy officials told us is that with the numbers that they're seeing earlier, they assume that the vote counts will be released just before the day ends, or just when the Americans will be seeing a new day with another president.
Okay.
And that's right, mail-in votes would actually take time, but seeing that other states with big electoral college votes coming in. So
Okay, Dale De Vera reporting live from outside the U.S. Embassy. Thank you very much, Dale De Vera. As we said, there were around 93 million mailed-in votes as of Sunday, and that may have increased in the last few days. It's interesting to point out that number because, like for example, in the 2016 elections, we understand around 139 or 140 million Americans voted. So you're looking at a substantial, at least for this year, substantial number of Americans who cast their mailed-in votes. So you may have either a shift from in-person votes to mail-in votes, or you may also actually have a rather huge increase in the number of people who are casting their votes this year. Because, like we said, in 2016, you had 139, 140 million Americans who cast their votes versus 230 plus million Americans of voting age who could have cast their votes. Anyway, one issue that's front and center of this year's U.S. elections is the burgeoning power struggle between the United States and China. For UP Pol Sci Department Chairman Herman Kraft, the Philippines should keep working on its relations with both countries regardless of what happens next. Kraft says most American allies are hoping for more stability from a Biden-led administration in terms of America's relations with the East. After all, Joe Biden is expected to at least refrain from escalating the ongoing showdown between China and the U.S.
Many of American allies in the region, and in Europe for that matter, I think would welcome a Biden administration because it's something that's more predictable. They think that a Biden administration would go in a direction that they are much more comfortable with, that they are familiar with. In other words, the kinds of alliance politics, for instance, that used to characterize American policies before Donald Trump is expected to come back.
However, Kraft cautions that a democratic government is not likely to walk back or try to heal the country's battered relationship with Beijing. But Kraft adds that the Philippines should not be too worried. The political scientist says there is no way to avoid complications when dealing with big rival countries like China and the U.S. anyway. Thus, the Philippines should just maintain its balance so it can somehow get the best of both worlds.
It's not a win situation either way, right? It's not a complete win situation. We have to deal with difficulties now when we deal with big countries with like China and the United States. We can't get everything that we want from them. So it's really trying to work out our relationship so that we get the best out of our relationship with either.
Now, Filipinos are, of course, used to the idea of a popular vote. The candidate who simply gets the most number of votes is declared the president. But in the U.S., what they have is a two-step system of indirect voting, also known as the Electoral College system. Now, in simple terms, the people tell their state who they want. Based on that, the 50 U.S. states then elect the president. Let's say, for example, Californians vote for Joe Biden over Donald Trump. If Biden takes California, then he gets all the 55 electoral votes that are assigned to California. What are electoral votes? These are essentially the votes that will represent that state in the presidential race. There are a total of 538 electoral votes spread among the 50 states. The magic number, of course, or the majority is 270. Whoever hits that number gets to sit as the president. Who casts the electoral votes? The state electors who form the Electoral College. These are people nominated by the two contending parties to cast the electoral votes, presumably in favor of the winner in the state election. We say presumably because sometimes somebody breaks this rule and refuses to cast an electoral vote in favor of the state winner. Now, it's a bit complicated already, but it gets even more complex. There's never any guarantee that the candidate who gets the most number of votes will win the presidency. And yes, that almost sounds antithetical to democracy, and that is what makes it so controversial. For example, in the 2016 elections, Hillary Clinton got 3 million votes more than Donald J. Trump. Yet Trump won because he got the most electoral votes from the 50 states. The same happened with Al Gore and George W. Bush in the year 2000. Gore got the popular vote, Bush got the electoral vote, and therefore the U.S. presidency. This has happened 5 times in American history. It happened to John Quincy Adams, Rutherford Hayes, and Benjamin Harrison, all U.S. presidents. Why doesn't the electoral vote always reflect the popular vote? The issue has to do with the distribution of the electoral votes among all the 50 states. The states are assigned electoral votes based on the number of their congressional districts plus 2 for their Senate seats. But also, states are provided a minimum of 3 electoral votes regardless of the size of their population. And of course, there are a few big states and a lot of small states. For example, the combined population of the 22 smallest states is less than 38 million. Now compare that to the lone state of California with a population of almost 40 million people. But despite the size of its population, California just has half the number of electoral votes of the 22 smaller states. So looking at California, they have 55 electoral votes versus 96 of these 22 smaller states. So clearly the votes of the residents in some states carry greater weight than the votes of others. And clearly not all votes are created equal. It's a peculiarity that has weighed heavily on American presidential electoral politics for almost 3 centuries. In fact, changing the electoral voting system has been one of the most often proposed constitutional amendments in U.S. history. But there's also a logic in this paradox. Now, to start with, remember that the United States is really a collection of states that have agreed to form a country. And that is why the states and not the individual voter get to choose their president. Also, the writers of the U.S. Constitution wanted to give the smaller states a greater voice. There was concern that candidates would ignore the smaller communities and pander to the needs of populated areas. There was also the concern that the average 18th century American, that's when the Constitution was made, was not prepared to choose a president, and so the state has to make that choice for him. And lastly, there was concern over the possibility of mob rule and that a popular or populist president would just pander to the whims of the voting masses. U.S. President Donald Trump is not a fan of mail-in voting, claiming that it is prone to fraud. But with the COVID-19 crisis hovering in the United States, millions of Americans are defying this narrative. Patricia Manguna tells us more.
Countries have had to adapt their voting process to the pandemic. Physical distancing had to be observed, and elder voters had to be given the option to vote from the comfort of their homes. One alternative option introduced is voting by mail. This practice has been in place since the U.S. Civil War and carries a long history of success. In fact, before the pandemic, Colorado, Hawaii, Oregon, Washington, and Utah held all-mail elections. Registered voters automatically received a ballot in the mail that allowed them to vote at home. But in the moments leading up to the elections, mail-in voting was placed under scrutiny. President Donald Trump has been making false claims, calling the vote-by-mail system prone to fraud.
I think it's a terrible thing when people or states are allowed to tabulate ballots for a long period of time after the election is over, because it can only lead to one thing, and that's very bad.
States that use all-mail balloting systems refuted these claims, and multiple studies have found little evidence of voter fraud. Mail-in votes will take time to count. This is because rules in some states don't allow election workers to start processing mail-in ballots until Election Day. And with a deluge in mail-in ballots, final tallies will face delays. As election looms, U.S. authorities try to separate bluster from threats. Trends from recent elections suggest a record-breaking 80 million postal votes cast this elections. The United States Elections Project estimates around 66 million ballots were requested.
Over 90 million people have already voted. Already voted. They've had enough. They've had enough. There's too much on the line to sit it out.
For News 5, Patricia Mangune. We are One News.
Among the 100 million ballots cast in the U.S. elections so far, these are from the Filipino-American community. However, Philams are not united in their vote, as some choose to re-elect Donald Trump while others want Joe Biden as their new leader. Let's discuss the U.S. elections from the perspective of the Philam community. We will have Ron Falcone, a former mayor of a town in Ohio. He is in charge of the Midwest campaign for Donald Trump. He will be joined by Rodney Salinas, co-founder of the Filipino Young Professionals Group in the U.S. Also sharing his insights is California-based Jan Argy Tolentino. He is a former political science professor in the Philippines. He will be joined by Noel Malvar, a senior researcher at the policy research firm More in Common. Now, majority of Filipino Americans in the U.S. are throwing their weight behind Democrat Joe Biden. At least that's what it looks so far. But the 34% who are for Trump still make up the highest support group among Asian communities or Asian American communities in the U.S. This is according to the 2020 Asian American Voter Survey. Now, to help us understand why Philams appear to be voting the way they do, we have with us California resident and former PUP political science professor Jan Argy Tolentino and More in Common's senior researcher Noel Malvar. Good day, Jan Argy, and good day, Noel. And thank you for joining us. Oh, can you hear us? Are we clear? Jan Argy and Noel. Jan Argy and Noel, can you hear us? Okay, can you hear us? Jan Argy, can you hear us? Noel, can you hear us? Okay, we are having a bit of a problem with the technical side of things. We will come back to them when this is fixed. But we are fortunate to have at least 4 people join us, even at this late time in the day. Let's try again. Oh, no, anyway. Okay, can you hear us? Oh yeah, can you hear us now? Can you hear us now? Thank you.
It's RG.
Oh, sorry, Jan Argy.
Yes, can hear you.
And Noel. Well, thank you for joining us.
We are having a bit of a problem with the technical side of things. We will come back to them when this is fixed. But we are.
Okay, that sounded like me. RG, right? Jan Argy, right? And Noel. Tell us exactly where are you in the United States right now? Jan Argy, where are you now?
Oh yeah, can you hear us now? Can you hear us now? Thank you. It's RG. Oh, sorry, Jan Argy.
Yes, can hear you.
And Noel. Well, thank you for joining us. We are having a bit of a problem with the technical side of things.
Okay, well, there's a bit of an echo there. We'll come back with Jan Argy and Noel in a few minutes. We'll just fix this connection. But it seems to be working already more or less. Just give us a few minutes. Anyway, the U.S. presidential elections have sparked conversations on social media across the globe. Let's now take a look at the latest trend on monitoring platform CrowdTangle. Sean Yao is joining us live from the newsroom. Sean, what do you have for us?
Actually, Ed, very interesting. Since you went to air, I've been just watching the numbers on here going up. This one measures the total interactions with certain candidates, of course, topped by Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Earlier, before we went to air, we were almost 50-50, 51-49. But then Donald Trump starts posting, right? He starts posting, he posts that we are big, but they are trying to steal the election. We will never let them do it. Votes cannot be cast after the polls are closed. And get this, he did misspell polls and he did edit that word over there. So now it's spelled correctly. As you can see, 109,000. It's only been minutes. He posted this maybe less than 20 minutes ago. And then he posted again saying, I will be making a statement tonight, a big win. All caps. You see, 300,000 likes over there. Sorry, 225,300 plus likes, right? But before that, I was actually scrolling through this feed. Mostly, it's been Joe Biden really posting a lot. He is currently in Delaware. He is live on Facebook right now. But prior to that, all the posts, as you can see, it's really Biden, Biden, Biden. We have Joe Jorgensen over here, but it's all really Biden, really going strong on social media. And I only caught one Donald Trump post. And despite that, one Donald Trump post in the last how many hours, maybe 4 or 5 hours, it's always him dominating interaction. So people are strongly reacting to Trump. He currently has 85% of the reactions online. Whether this is good or bad, I cannot tell you that, but he definitely has 85% versus 14% for Joe Biden. If we look over here at Instagram's a little bit different. I'll show you the interactions over the past 7 days. Over the last 7 days, you can see that it's really been 50-50 between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. So that just really goes to show us what happened there. There we go. Let's go back to that. So we can really see that on Instagram, maybe the audience a little bit different versus the ones on Facebook. But definitely, when it comes to the vice presidential candidates, no one is noisier than Kamala Harris versus Mike Pence. There's almost zero interactions when it comes to Mike Pence compared to Kamala Harris, who is, of course, the Democratic vice presidential candidate. When we see the interactions over the last 7 days on Facebook, we can see 78% for Kamala Harris versus 18% for Mike Pence. And on Instagram, when we take a quick check, let's do the last 7 days as well. Week leading up to the elections, 95% Kamala Harris, 5% Mike Pence. So there you go. That's how it's going here on social media. I'll still continue to check out, especially the swing states you've mentioned. For now, back to you.
Okay, we will pause for a short break, but when we return, we will take a closer look at how the elections affect the Phil-Am community. Keep it here on One News. Yo! Saan pwede maki-ano? John RG, Noel, can you hear us now?
You're watching One News's special coverage of the U.S. elections. I'm Ed Lingao. And so now we continue with our conversation with at least two professionals, two Filipino-Americans who are now in the U.S. And ask them their opinions and their insights on what is happening there right now. Of course, we are joined by Professor John R.G. Tolentino, former Pol Sci professor in the Philippines, currently living in California. He is, of course, joined by Noel Malvar, a senior researcher at the policy research firm More in Common. Professor and Ma'am Noel, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Thank you, Ed, for the invitation.
Thank you.
But yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Of course, we do want to talk about policy. We also want to talk about the issues and interests of the Phil-American community. But let me start off with something that seems to be a bit more urgent. We understand that there was a social media post by President Trump accusing the Democrats of stealing the elections, and that he will make an announcement, he says, tonight, announcing a big win on his part or on his end. You're there right now. You're looking at the numbers. I'm sure as we go along. Is it too early to? Isn't it a bit too early to make that kind of a forecast and schedule an announcement?
Well, one, it's going to be a tight election. I mean, it's 2016 all over again. And what we're seeing is there's a possibility na pwedeng 269 pa nga eh. If, for example, if the trends are coming in, Georgia goes to Trump, and the battle goes now to the Midwest, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Well, Pennsylvania is a must-win for both camps, for both Biden and Donald Trump. Whoever wins Pennsylvania has an edge. But there is also a projection, possibly yung 269, and it will go down to either the one electoral vote, either in Maine or in Nebraska. So yeah, and that's the reason I think why Donald Trump wants to sow confusion on the result of the election. Kung halimbawa lang ma-invalidate yung Pennsylvania, there's another option kasi, there's another possibility na pwedeng mangyari, that this election will not be decided by the Electoral College, but this election will be decided by the House of Representatives. And in the House of Representatives, each delegation of the states will have to decide where they would give their vote. At dun sa delegation na yon, at the moment, parang lamang ng isang boto si Donald Trump. That's why he's saying, there's massive cheating, let's not resolve this through the election, let's throw this to the House of Representatives. That's my theory.
Oh, that's an option in the Constitution of the United States?
Yeah, that's an option. It happened during the time of, I think, if I'm not mistaken, President Tyler in 1876. Na it was the House of Representatives who eventually decided of who will win the election. It's in the Constitution, and it's in the 12th Amendment.
Okay, that's fascinating. Ma'am Noel, what about you? Your point of view on this?
I think I agree with everything Professor just said, and also his ultimate point na it's not the candidates who decide the results, right? It's the voters, it's the election officials. And so it's too early to tell. I mean, as a candidate, you can't just declare yourself the winner if it's not official yet.
But the implications of making an announcement by tonight, what would the implications be? Given the fact, for example, that in the past few weeks, President Trump has raised a possibility that he may not necessarily respect the results if they go against him. And he's also questioned the validity of the mail-in voting system.
Yeah, that's the thing. This is not something new. I mean, if he just said in his Twitter post now that he thinks there is massive cheating, hindi bago to. Ginawa niya na to as early as when the campaign started. He's trying to sow confusion among the electorate, and then yung mismong proseso ay sinasabi niya na hindi mapagkakatiwalaan. Kasi sa tingin niya, mas madali sa kanyang manalo when this all boils down to the House of Representatives.
That's an interesting point of view. I don't think Filipinos know about that, at least Filipinos here in the Philippines, that there's that option where the House of Representatives gets to choose who the winner is. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, how it works?
Yeah, the required number is 270, hindi ba? There are 538 electoral
Yeah.
votes. There are 500
The magic number.
electoral votes. That's the magic number. The majority is 270. Hindi naman pwedeng pag tinanggal mo yung isang state, bababa yung 270 to get the majority. So it has to still be 270. Now, for example, if you take out 20 electoral vote ng Pennsylvania, which I think yun yung tinitira ngayon ni President Trump, then nobody, it's possible, if Biden wins Wisconsin and Michigan, and then the Pennsylvania ballot is nullified, then it's possible na walang makakuha ng 270. Now, if kagaya sa atin, Kongreso yung nagkakanvas ng boto, hindi ba? So, posible na yung Pennsylvania, the governor is a Democrat, the legislature is a Republican, they would send two different election results. One saying Biden wins, the other one saying Trump wins, and then nobody would, both houses, the Senate and the House, would decide separately whether to accept which result. Kung halimbawa walang tinanggap, hindi tinanggap ng House yung kung ano mang yung gusto ng Senado, ang mangyayari, the House, each delegation, ibig sabihin California, which has 53 congressmen, Wyoming has 1. Wyoming will have 1 vote. California, which has 53 congressmen, will have 1 vote. So kung sino yung mas majority ng 50 states or 26 na delegation will have the vote, and they could declare somebody, whether it's Trump or Biden, the president. That's a possibility. That's a possibility.
You mean the states only get 1 vote each, regardless of the population or the number of congressional districts?
Exactly right. When it's the House of Representatives who decides on the election. That's what happened. That's under the 12th Amendment.
Okay. That throws a big monkey wrench in everything.
Exactly. That's why this is going to be a long night for both camps, and yeah, that's a real possibility now that Biden wasn't able to flip major battleground states like Florida or North Carolina, but we still have to wait for Georgia.
Well, you're talking po about the possibility of a neck and neck fight. Sabi nga ninyo, baka mamaya parang evenly distributed sila eh. Was that expected given the criticism leveled against Trump in the last 4 years? Was that expected that he would still put up such a good fight?
Well, parang
Sige, Noel po. Noel.
I wouldn't say it depends on what camp you are, right? The Democrats were really hoping for a landslide, a clearer margin of victory, para less yung doubt at less yung space for the president to declare victory prematurely or fraud. But I think the Republicans just held on and always knew that it was going to be a close fight. And so I would say na siguro expected siya. Hindi ko lang alam na kung in-expect ng mga tao na 2016 all over again na ganito ka-close.
Let me zoom into the Phil-Americans and the concerns, well, not just of the Phil-Americans, even the concerns of Filipinos here in the Philippines. As far as Phil-Americans and Filipinos are concerned, what are the issues being debated on here in this fight between these two candidates? Where do we factor in?
I guess there was a survey just as late as September among Asian Americans, and yung mga itong survey na to, basically typical health, economy, the coronavirus. These are the issues that are high on priorities of Filipino-Americans. But and dito sa election to, in that survey also, 52% said they're gonna vote for Biden, 34% they said they're gonna vote for Trump, and 12% is undecided.
Yep.
Yes, I think we're talking about the same survey that we had in the lead-in. But I asked
Oh,
it
I'm
because
sorry.
President Trump has the image of somebody who is anti-immigration, at least image-wise. So how does that factor in when it comes to Filipinos and Phil-Americans when they decide their vote? I mean, wouldn't that affect Filipinos? Wouldn't that affect how Filipinos look at these candidates?
Noel?
Alam mo, yes, if you think about it, right? Like we want to think that, pero the data is the data. They're concerned about primarily the economy, health, the coronavirus, like the survey said. And talagang immigration is just lower tier concern for Filipinos and Filipino-Americans. And syempre, like we can't make generalizations. Some Filipinos in other states will have different concerns. Pero as a whole, when they get in the voting booth, um, hindi yun yung talagang nasa top of mind nila.
Mhm. That's interesting. I'd like to go back to that. We just have to pause for a break because we have a news break. But please stay with us, and we will come back.
Sure.
watching One News's special coverage of the U.S. elections. I'm Ed Lingao. And of course, we are still with our guests from the United States. We're talking to former PUP professor John R.G. Tolentino and Noel Malvar, a social psychologist from New York City, to know their take on the elections. Noel, if I may, Karina, you were saying a while ago that, and you're right, the data is the data, and that's what it shows. However, for example, me, I come from a generation na kilalang kilala yung katagang TNT, tago ng tago. So you have so many generations of Filipinos who made use of that immigration policy of previous administrations. I know you said na the data is the data nga, pero what do you think? And I suppose I should address discussion to both of you. What do you think would be the reason why President Trump still has that kind of popularity among communities that are based on immigration?
Well, I'll try to answer this.
Yeah.
Siguro, yung mga Asian Americans kasi, di ba, parang ito yung mga sinasabi nilang model minority. So, yung binibira ni Trump, itong sinasabi niyang mga illegal aliens from Latin America, from Mexico, that are coming in, bringing in drugs, and yung mga Pilipino, ang feeling nila, hindi kami yung pinututungkulan ni Trump dito, because we're model immigrants, ganon. Yung model Asian American ang mga Pinoy. Kahit TNT yan, nagbabayad pa rin ng tax yan, sumusunod sa batas, wala kang mababaltaan dito na Pinoy na may ginawang krimen kumpara doon sa mga binabanggit ni Trump. So I think there is that thinking. And you know, I mean, yung mga kababayan natin sa Pilipinas, hindi ba, regardless kung anong sinasabi ni President Duterte, pero mataas pa rin yung approval rating niya. Why would we think that the Filipino-Americans would think differently dahil lang ba nasa Amerika sila? So may ganun pa rin may ganun pa rin kultura. Palagay ko na pakiramdam nila kung si President Duterte binibira yung mga drug addict, hindi ako drug addict. Kung si President Trump binibira yung mga illegal immigrants, model immigrant ako. Ganun yung tingin ko pananaw ng mga Phil-Americans dito sa Amerika.
Parang sila yun, hindi kami.
Yeah.
Noel, what about you, Noel?
Yeah, tsaka ang dadagdag ko lang is that the Filipino community here is still, I mean, religious and have conservative values. So may mga sacred values pa rin sila, like being against abortion na, yeah, hindi talaga sila tatanggap ng party who will be okay with that. And that will be one of their wedge issue, diba? So.
And I suppose, for example, same-sex marriage.
Right. Yeah.
And LGBTQI issues as well. Well, what about issues like human rights? Would these be issues that factor in how Filipino Americans look at the candidates?
Well, you look at both. I mean, depende. For example, sa Republicans, human rights on matters of religious rights, for example. So yun yung titingnan ng mga Pilipino doon. Pero kung titingnan natin, Ed, yung profile ng mga Pilipino, mas mas dapat Republican, mas malaki yung bilang ng Republican kaysa sa mga Democrats, but it's not what's in the number. Kasi yun nga, binanggit ni Noel, socially conservative ang mga Pilipino on gay marriage, on abortion, that's republicanism. There was a time, Ed, na mas marami pang Pinoy-American sa U.S. Navy kaysa sa Philippine Navy mismo. And this segment of population tilts towards Republican on concerns of national security. Siguro dun lang sa social programs, on higher wages, on the economy, mas natitilt ang mga Pilipino towards the Democrats. Pero bakit nga ba mababa yung outreach ng mga Republicans sa mga Pinoy? In fact, yung sinasabi ng mga bumoboto kay Donald Trump, pangalawa tayo, yung mga Asian Americans. Una yung mga Vietnamese. Tapos mga Pinoy, yung second highest support for Donald Trump. Kasi nga, yun yung pakiramdam ko, that our profile fits more of the Republican more than the Democrats. Nagkataon lang that yung concentration ng mga Pilipino, halimbawa New York, kung nasaan si Noel, dito sa California, maybe Hawaii, Washington, Oregon, itong mga state na to ay politically dominated by the Democrats. So the outreach, mas may outreach yung mga Democrats. Kaya parang doon sila napunta. But I think given a choice and looking at the spectrum, mas magpifit yung profile ng mga Pinoy sa Republican.
Okay. What about the economy? Issues about unemployment and the distribution of wealth. And
Yeah, that's a great question. Kasi according to exit polls, actually, economy is one of the top issues in signs.
that
Pero,
issue
talagang, pero again, relating it to 2020, sa isip ng mga people who voted for Donald Trump is that before the pandemic, okay naman yung economy and we were growing, jobs were okay. So, parang yung attribution nila of blame for the recession is dahil dun sa pandemic at hindi dahil kay Trump. So, hindi nila fina-fault si President Trump doon so they can still support him and his economic policies. Kaya, it didn't play a factor as much, I think. That's
What about taxation? What about taxation?
Taxation. Well, ang talking points ng taxation ay yung tax program ni Biden of taxing people who make more than a certain amount income-wise. And yun yung talagang tinira ni Trump na raising taxes for the middle class, even though yung mga people naman who make that amount are not considered middle class. Pero I think taxation was just an issue na dominate lang ng talking points more than the policy details. And so ang narinig ng mga tao, including Filipinos, is that, middle class taxation. And so na lost in translation na yung mga little details like income level and kung ilan talagang percent and yung mga variations by state, etc.
It's just the broad message of imposing taxes, not so much the details as to who gets hit by the taxes.
Yeah.
Ed, an interesting trivia, no? No president has won the presidency under a recession, except for one in the last 100 years, 120 years. It's only McKinley. So, si Hoover, si Bush, si Carter, all of those one-term presidents na nagkaroon ng recession during their time or on the year, 2 years before, a year before the election, they all lost the election. So, kung may papanalo to ni Trump, then that he could be an outlier. So, totoo yung sinabi ni Noel, hindi binabato ng mga Amerikano yung blame to Trump but to the virus. So that's maybe the reason why kung bakit mataas pa rin yung support niya dito sa halalan na to.
Well, let me throw in one more issue. What about China and the South China Sea?
Okay. I said kanina, di ba, we're leaning towards Republican, especially nga sabi ko, may panahon na yung paraan na pagpunta natin sa Amerika ng mga Pilipino, the migration was through the U.S. Navy. So a lot of Filipino family our national security is high on their priority. So they think yung rise of China was somehow a result ng kapabayaan ng Obama administration, and that's the reason why they're not really into Biden. And then, but I think looking at it, Biden would be tougher on China than Donald Trump, because we saw it in the last 4 years. Na yung mga sinasabi niya, it's all just bravado, and he's not really doing anything to contain China.
Yeah. Hindi, totoo yun. Tsaka, so another example of the details getting lost in the messaging, kasi I remember a survey a couple of, siguro mga 1 month ago na, yun yung issue ni Trump kung saan siya talaga malakas is his stance against China, which he reinforced by calling the virus the China virus. And always talking about China in a certain way. So sa tingin ng mga tao, siya yung tougher candidate on China, but pag tinignan mo talaga yung policy details, actually yung foreign policy plan ni Biden ay yung mas makaka-rein in sa China compared kay Trump.
Okay. Okay. Let me broaden that for my last question. Let me broaden the topic a little bit. Filipinos are not, of course, used to the U.S. electoral system where you have the electoral college over there. Tayo kasi dito sa Pilipinas, ano lang eh, talagang popular vote lang. Whoever gets the most vote wins. I was looking at the maps from 2016 and the emerging map now in 2020. At least as far as the colors go, about red for the Republicans and blue for the Democrats. As far as the colors go, mukhang similar, very very similar so far. Yung distribution ng states as far as the parties are concerned. So is that going to be an omen as to what is going to happen at the end of the election?
Well, that really depends on what happens in the Midwest, di ba? Yung tatlo. Yung kagaya din ng 2016, sabi ko nga sa post ko sa Facebook, it's Deja Vu 2016. It will all boil down to Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. And then yung binabad ko ngayon, the possibility ng tie. If Biden wins Michigan, Wisconsin, and Arizona, most likely would go to Biden. And then Trump wins Florida, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania. And then the result of the 2016 is exactly the same. Ito yung situation na meron kang 269 for both of the candidates. So ito yung wala makakakuha ng 270. That's why flipping the one electoral vote of Maine or one electoral vote of Nebraska becomes crucial for both of them, for both of the camp. So I don't know yet. I'm not confident with Michigan. It would go to Biden. It could be a surprise. I think Wisconsin is going to Biden. Pennsylvania, ang laki ng mga areas ng mga Democrats like Philadelphia and then Pittsburgh. Yung Philadelphia, yung kanan, kaliwa niyan, Democrat, yung nasa gitna, yung malaki, yung mga rural areas, that's Republican. And I think it hurt Biden when in the last debate, he said he's going to ban fracking and oil exploration, na yung middle of Pennsylvania, yun yung kinabubuhay. So siguro it was a miscalculation on the part of Biden. Initially, I think it was a genius approach because I think he was asking young people to vote, because that's a real issue for young people, banning fracking, banning oil exploration, climate change. But we didn't see that much turnout from the youth. And then, yung resulta ng calculation ni Biden noon will now have an effect on Philadelphia. And kagaya, ang sitwasyon na to, ang titignan natin dito, si Trump ba, mas mataas ba yung boto niya kumpara ng 2016 doon sa mga area na nanalo siya? Mm-hmm. Or it's all about the margins. Right. Ang mag-decide sa Pennsylvania. So Pennsylvania is like Florida all over again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, tama yun. Tsaka maghihintayan ng mga mail-in ballots. So yeah, count every vote. Ang hirap magsabi prematurely, not decisively kung sino talaga. Siguro in the next day or two pa, bago confident.
Medyo confusing yung mail-in votes sa mga Pinoy dito sa Pilipinas kasi dito wala naman tayong mail-in votes eh. Dito kasi baka mawala sa koryo yung boto mo sakali.
Meron tayong mail-in votes. It's called absentee voting, di ba? Yung mga military, kaming mga nandito sa Amerika, yeah. So, meron pero hindi
iba po yung sistema niyan. Anyway, sige po.
It's not why sa atin kailangan mo talagang pumunta present yung sarili mo on election day. But because it's pandemic, pero ito ginagawa na to even President Trump before the pandemic is doing absentee voting.
Yeah. So, what I mean to ask her, what I mean to ask her is that you're looking at a substantial number of mailed-in votes in the United States, and different states, different ways of counting, and different times of counting the mailed-in votes. Like I understand that a lot of the states will only count the mailed-in votes after the in-person votes are counted. So wouldn't that extend the count longer than the usual? In other words, would we have a result by tomorrow? Today or later today in your case, or the day after pa?
As I said, it's going to depend sa margins, sa lamang ng bawat isa, di ba? If you remember, Pennsylvania is only about, lumamang lang si Trump ng 44,000. That's a fraction of a percentage. In Michigan, it's 10,000. In Wisconsin, it's 20,000. Ngayon, tama ka, each of the state has its own system. Halimbawa, ang Wisconsin and Michigan, there's a partial early verification of mail-in ballots. Sa Pennsylvania, hindi ganon. Gagawin lang nila ngayong gabi kasi nung mag-close yung dahil, yun nga, election management is state by state. So, and then Pennsylvania, according to a court ruling, it can still accept until Friday, I think. Friday here. Ito mga absentee voting. And then, I think Wisconsin is 10 days after the election. I'm not sure with Michigan. Pero, yun na, kung malaking lamang, and then the expected absentee voting, na hinihintay pa nila itong mga 2-3 days, depende sa state, itong Midwest states, we will know kung sino mananalo. Pero kung maliit ang margin, just like in 2016, then ito yung constitutional crisis, and that's why Trump is saying this, na nagkakadayaan.
Okay. I'd like to say thank you to our first two guests for tonight, Professor Jan Algie Tolentino, former PUP Pol Sci professor, and of course, Ma'am Noel Malvar, senior researcher at policy research firm More in Common. We learned a lot from you tonight. The best of luck to you guys over there in the United States. Maraming salamat po, and thank you for joining us.
And so Arizona has been particularly important in this race. Explain to us why and what we can expect there.
You know, Maricopa County is emblematic of what we're seeing in suburban communities all across America, and that is college-educated white women principally, but also other demographics moving away from the Republican Party, in some cases planning to vote for Biden even if they are registered Republicans. You know, here in Maricopa County, it's a story of vastly growing population and changing demographics driven principally by jobs. You know, there are a lot of new tech jobs here in this state. As you said, the polls suggest across these swing states that Biden has a lead. Here in Arizona, he's led by around 3 points for several months, although a new NBC Marist poll out today put him level with President Trump. Although strategists that I've spoken to in both parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, say that this race is going to be much closer
You're watching One News's special coverage of the U.S. elections. I'm Ed Lingao. A political analyst believes that the Phil-Am community does not really mind the Trump administration's take on immigration issues. But with Trump's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic, some Phil-Ams might opt for a new leader this time. Here's the story.
Back in April, U.S. President Donald Trump issued an executive order temporarily halting new green cards. He said it's not only to help stop the spread of COVID-19, but also to protect American jobs amid the pandemic. This move threatens the lives of some Filipino immigrants working in the U.S. That's also on top of Trump's anti-immigration rhetorics that made him swing some supporters. During his 2016 campaign, Trump said the U.S. should stop letting in so-called animals from terrorist nations like the Philippines. U.S.-based think tank Migration Policy Institute reported that 2 million Filipino immigrants were living in the U.S. in 2018. They also noted that Filipinos are more likely to obtain green card and be naturalized compared to other immigrant groups. But because of Trump's words and actions, some Filipino migrants fear that they will be sent back to the Philippines. This includes 3,270 Filipino Dreamers, or the recipients of the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, also known as the DACA program. The U.S. Supreme Court earlier blocked Trump's move to end DACA. But Trump vowed to his supporters that he will still push for the termination of the said program. Despite these immigration issues, political analyst Aris Arugay said the Phil-Am community is historically supportive of the Republicans. But with Trump's way of handling the COVID-19 pandemic in the U.S., Phil-Am voters might vote blue this time around.
The anti-Chinese rhetoric of the Trump campaign has negatively affected the Asian American community, and some of those are Filipino. So, in a way, a lot of Filipino Americans are undecided. I think the way that the Trump administration has handled the COVID-19 response might be the one that will determine whether Filipino Americans will stay Republican or will just vote for Biden simply because they are dissatisfied with the way that Trump has handled the pandemic.
Democrat candidate Joe Biden promised the Dreamers that he will make DACA permanent on his first day if elected. DACA was first implemented under the Obama term, when Biden was his vice president. Aside from pushing for DACA, Biden also claimed that he will provide a roadmap to citizenship for illegal immigrants in the U.S. If this happens, his plan can benefit more than 310,000 undocumented Filipinos in the U.S., also known as TNT.
And let's get more insights from Mr. Rodney Salinas, a Phil-Am community leader. I think he's in Washington, D.C. And joining him is Ron Falcone, a recognized leader in charge of the Midwest campaign for President Trump. Good day, Ron and Rodney, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you po.
Maraming salamat, mga kababayan. I understand po, you both of course belong to different camps. Si former mayor ay na kay Trump and si Rodney is with Joe Biden. Pero let me ask you this po. We will go into other issues like immigration among other things. Pero let me ask you this po because this seems to be more immediate. Si President Trump has said that he will make an announcement later tonight of a big win. From where you are right now, does it look like the numbers are already enough to make that kind of a call?
Right now, unfortunately, I've been doing a lot of interviews here for the past few hours, so I haven't had the opportunity to see what the numbers look like. But the last time I checked, all of the numbers seem like they are trending in favor of the president. I think there's a lot of negativity when the president stated, or people are asking him if he's going to be accepting the results of the election. But the thing that I'm concerned with is how come no one in the media seems to be asking if the Democrats or if Joe Biden or even if the mainstream media here in the United States is going to be accepting the results of the election, because they haven't even accepted the results of the election in 2016.
What I mean, sir, that they have not accepted the results of 2016. I thought there was a concession in 2016.
Yes, but the problem is people, in my view, the media and the Democratic Party still haven't truly accepted Donald Trump as the president of the United States.
Oh, okay.
They've tried to impeach him. They've tried to throw all kinds of roadblocks. They've tried excuse after excuse after excuse as to why he won, but they haven't really gotten down into they haven't really talked to. In my view, they haven't really talked to the American people as to why they lost in 2016. They have always been and are still fighting the battle from the past. When that's already done. Donald Trump is our president and has been our president for 4 years, and I don't think they've accepted that.
Although,
I think
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
media should really ask the Democrats, are they going to accept the results of this election once the president wins again?
Although, Mayor, there is a bit of I mean, you're talking about the different weights of announcements. For example, if the president, if a sitting president says that he will not respect the results of an election, that's different from a losing candidate saying that he will not respect the results of an election, because one is in power and he may hold on to that, and the other one is not in power. So they may not be necessarily apples and apples.
Well, I I disagree. I think it's pretty much the same here. I think the president, just like anyone who's involved in this process, well, they want to have a fair contest, fair election. So, people are still waiting to see if that's going to happen. I believe it will happen. I believe that it's going to be a fair election, but we want to see what's going on. I mean, it's already, like I said, it's about 2 a.m. here on the East Coast. Some states haven't been called yet, so I know that everyone is still waiting in anticipation as to see what will happen.
What about you, Rodney? What are you seeing from your end?
Yeah, the president has already been on Twitter, his favorite medium choice, to go on to say that the Democrats are already stealing this election. But it is very clear that there's only one individual who is trying to steal this election, and it is Donald J. Trump. Very plain and simple. Not until every single vote has been counted, absentee, mail-in, those that are coming in for the military overseas, that is when the election is done. And when the people of America speak, that is when the election and the victor will be declared.
Well, I understand that the concern of everybody, and that includes both Democrats and Republicans, and even us who are not in the U.S., who are not Americans, is that what if nobody concedes, whether the incumbent or the challenger? What if nobody concedes? Where will the U.S. be left? I mean, what's going to be next? For example, Mayor, if, and I do remember that the president said something to that effect, that, and tell me if I'm getting this right, that the elections are going to be marred by fraud, and that he may not accept results that would show him to be defeated. Is that a correct interpretation? And how will that be operationalized, or how will that be put in effect?
Once again, I mean, I think everyone is still waiting to see what the results are going to be, and then we'll see what's going to happen after that. In the past, and even just a few weeks ago, the former Democratic nominee Hillary Clinton asked Joe Biden not to concede under any circumstances. And no one seems to be pressing her on that. No one seems to be pressing the Biden campaign about that. So you're right. I mean, it is concerning that if the Democrats lose again, they may not concede. What's going to happen? I don't know. But like I said, I mean, it's getting late here on the East Coast, so we're trying to see what's going to happen in regard to those other states which haven't been called yet. When I'm looking at those numbers, all those numbers tend to be aiming towards the president's reelection at this time. And of course, those numbers are not at all what the media and the Democratic Party have been telling the American people for several months. That they were given the impression that Biden was way ahead, when he was up by maybe 20 points, 30 points, that he was leading in all the battleground states, that this was a sure thing. I heard as early as just a few weeks ago that people in the Biden campaign, and of course, everyone in the media was very, very excited for who is going to be in a Biden cabinet. And of course, none of that was true. This election is very close. And in my view, the Democrats, as well as the media, are trying to prop up their side, and it's not going to work. The president, I believe, will win re-election tonight, if not in the next day or so.
Well, yes, Mayor. That's why, from our end, we do not want to talk about the electoral college vote until the electoral college votes really do come in. We don't want to make any projections along those lines. But let me ask you this then. Let me ask you this: if the electoral college votes in favor of Biden, will Trump step down? I think that is foremost in the minds of everybody. Will Trump step down if the numbers from the Electoral College, not projections, but the numbers from the Electoral College show show that Biden leads Trump?
Here, I mean, I believe that the president is going to, if that's what the results show and it was a fair election, then that's what's going to happen. But you know, like I said, it seems like everyone is focusing on the president, is focusing on the Republicans, and no one seems to be focusing on what the Democrats are going to do or not do. You know, like I said before, Hillary Clinton, the former Democratic nominee, informed Joe Biden not to concede under any circumstances, and no one seems to be pressing her or the Biden campaign on that.
Okay, let's throw the question to Rodney. Rodney, what do you think?
2020, and Hillary Clinton is not on the ballot tonight. Joe Biden is on the ballot tonight. Kamala Harris is on the ballot tonight. So I believe it's irrelevant to keep bringing up Hillary Clinton because she's not the one on the ballot. And believe you me, if the Electoral College turns the way that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris end up losing, they will gladly concede, and they will do so gracefully. I can't believe I would say the same for the current inhabitants.
We understand that, but at least we'd like to get your voices here so that people can hear your voices. Well, Mayor, you heard Rodney. As far as he knows and as far as he's concerned, his camp should concede if the votes show a Trump win. The actual, not the projected, the actual votes show that Trump has won. From your end, what do you think? Would the Trump administration step down?
Well, first of all, I think maybe perhaps Rodney should run for president, because if they lose and he steps down, or if I was running for president and if I lose, I would step down. Here, the thing is that I don't sense that from the other side. You know, and maybe if perhaps they'll step down. I don't, or concede. I don't know if they will. They've already been given advice not to concede. And if you can just look at the state of America over the past several months, you know, there have been rioting and looting in the streets, and these people are also the same people whom I believe are supportive of the Democratic nominee. If this election does not go their way, if Joe Biden and Kamala Harris do not win, I believe that their supporters will riot in the streets. They will protest. They'll engage in rioting.
Okay, Rodney is shaking his head. Rodney.
No, I think that's a wide generalization, and it's unfortunate because, you know, the people that are responding to the president's actions are only doing so because they feel like they don't have a voice, because they don't feel like they have any other path to be heard. And that is the most unfortunate thing in the United States of America to this date. The most recent polls that have come out, even to today, show that right behind the economy, the number one issue of concern on exit polls for today was race inequality. That is what they are most concerned with. And that is exactly what the president of the United States has been doing this entire time. He's been race baiting. He's been doing dog whistles to his supporters. And that is what the United States, and that is what most Americans are tired of doing. And it is my hope that at the end of the day, when all of the votes are cast, that it is Joe Biden and Kamala Harris who are the ones who are the victors.
Well, Mayor, Rodney had a good point a while ago that may bear looking into. He did say that it is Joe Biden's words that should matter more than Hillary Clinton. I mean, if Hillary Clinton gives advice that he shouldn't concede just like that, that's Hillary Clinton. It's not Joe Biden making the announcement, not like President Trump.
Yes, here once again. I mean, I'll say it again. Here, in the end, you know, I believe that if the the returns don't come the way that the Democrats want, there's always going to be a problem. If you look at even just the history of the past elections, especially in 2016, you'll hear the Democrats or the media claim that, oh, well, there's all these problems in 2016. Were there any problems in 2012? No. Were there any problems in 2008? No, because they won. There are problems in 2004. Absolutely, there were problems in 2004. There were problems in 2000? Absolutely. Every time the Democrats lose, there's always a problem with the vote. Here, I guarantee you that if the election does not go our way, does not go the Republicans' way, you will not see Republicans rioting in the streets or destroying property or doing anything of that. Will we be upset? Absolutely. Go back to work. Thanks. I can almost guarantee there will be rioting in the streets because the Democrats are going to be upset about this. I believe that's what's going to happen.
Rodney, but wouldn't that be a generalization? Wouldn't that be quite a big generalization of a party that it's a party that riots in the streets?
Yeah, it's unfortunate to hear you say that and to hear you believe that, because when the Michigan Governor Whitmer had issued orders for everybody to wear a mask and for everybody to go into quarantine to protect the health of the general public, I believe it was supporters of President Trump who came up to the state capitol wearing full militia gear, wearing AK-47s, and who are inciting violence because they believed that wearing a simple mask for their own protection was a violation of their rights. It was those people, not our people, that were worried about what was going on with the United States. So you talk about inciting violence. I think, we ought to look very closely at the current occupant of the White House, because it is that individual who is blowing dog whistles to his supporters to incite violence, not the other way around.
Mm-hmm. Although, Rodney, also to be fair, I think those people who went to the Capitol in full militia gear, they were still within their rights. I'm referring to state rights. They had the right to bear arms and bring those arms so long as they are not violating any law. So there is also a difference between as he said, rioting in the streets and carrying guns that are licensed or allowed.
Agreed. You absolutely have their Second Amendment rights here in the United States that allow you to carry a firearm. However, to stand there in plain view on the steps of a state capitol with an automatic rifle without having any consequences borne to you, that is a problem. Had that been an African-American man or a person of color, this would have been a totally different situation. And anybody who disagrees with that is living in a different United States than I certainly am.
Okay, Mayor, would you like to add anything else? Before I go into Phil-American issues, I'd also like to talk about issues close to the Filipino-American and as well to Filipinos here in the homeland. I mean, I'm talking about the Philippines, of course. Anything you'd like to add before we go into that?
Oh, yeah. Here, first of all, I don't recall, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that there was widespread rioting in Lansing, Michigan, or there were people that were killed or police officers that were killed. Once again, as you mentioned, these people are exercising their Second Amendment rights. Regardless of what race they were there and they were protesting against a governor's decision, and that's within their right to do. There was no, once again, you correct me if I'm wrong. I don't recall widespread businesses being looted or destroyed. I don't recall people being killed. But that's how Republicans protest.
Mm-hmm. Let me zoom into to what you might call Phil-American issues, and here, of course, we're talking about issues that have an appeal to, especially to the viewers of our network. What are the issues that were primary or important to Phil-Ams in this election? Any of you, Rodney or Ron?
I'll let the mayor go first.
And I think I just touched about it before. I think the president is a president of law and order. He's not gonna stand for these left-wing mobs. He's not gonna stand for these rioting and looting in the streets. And especially I know that they're on the West Coast. Filipino businesses were looted and destroyed. It carefully highlights the differences between the two presidential candidates. One of them stands for law and order. One of them does not.
If I may, I think that the number one issue that is affecting the Filipino-American community is pretty clear. It has to do with COVID-19 and the president's lack of responsibility, personal responsibility, and lack of leadership. And that is the number one issue that is on the minds of the Filipino-American community. And let me tell you why. Because Filipino-American nurses, although they only represent 4% of all nurses in the United States, are disproportionately affected by the effects of COVID-19. Over 30% of the nursing deaths in the United States are directly related to COVID-19 are Filipino Americans. And if that doesn't resonate with this community and with this audience, then we're not on the right program. And that is the reason, the number one reason why Filipino Americans are running to the polls early and on voting day today to vote in favor of Joe Biden, because President Trump has not taken personal responsibility. He himself said he does not feel personally responsible for all of his actions during this entire 10-month quarantine that has been happening here. And Joe Biden is the only individual who can lead us out of this mess that President Trump has created.
Mayor, what about COVID-19 and the president's response?
That's why, because the president is not responsible, just like Joe Biden is not responsible for this. China is responsible. China.
Oh my gosh,
China, and
that
the
is exactly the type of finger pointing to the Chinese that the president has been doing for months now. That has led to
it's not Joe Biden's fault.
Violence against Asian Americans across these United States, including Filipino Americans. And it's truly unfortunate, Mr. Mayor, to hear you use the same exact language that the president has to divide our people, to divide our community.
This is where they started. That's what I'm saying. It started there. They're the ones to blame, not us, not you, not the president, not Joe Biden, not Americans, not Filipino nurses. It started in China. And unfortunately, they weren't able to contain that. The president acted decisively in banning travel from China at a time when he was accused of racism and xenophobia. This is way back earlier this year, and people mocked him for doing this. And then later, the president controlled travel to and from Europe. Unfortunately, everybody the whole world is affected by this, and everyone's still trying to find out what works, what doesn't work. Obviously, we need to be able to come together as this. I know the president has been working with scientists and doctors to work on a vaccine, and that is, hopefully, we'll have one in the next few weeks or the next few months. But that's already on the horizon.
To blame China for it being the origin of a virus, it's basically a microorganism that's easy to be transported without being detected. I understand. I mean, even Filipinos here in the Philippines, there was some sort of antagonism as well with what happened from Wuhan. But perhaps to blame the country or the government of a country because of the existence of a virus, wouldn't that be taking it a bit too far?
No, I don't think so. I mean, that's where it started. They had the opportunity to control it there, and they failed to do so. Do we even know the numbers that are happening in China right now? It's because it's run by the communist government, and it is what it is. But it's certainly not Donald Trump's fault, nor the Filipino nurses' fault, or Joe Biden's fault, or the Democratic Party's fault. It's not there. For some reason, the finger pointing, I'm just stating a fact. It started in China. It's certainly not. It's not the president's fault, and it's not America's fault.
Well, Rodney, to that point, would it be President Trump's fault that there is such a virus and that it's spread in the United States? Weren't sufficient safety measures put in place during the spread of the virus?
I would Excuse me, I would never blame President Trump for bringing coronavirus, COVID-19 into existence. However, what I do hold him responsible for is his lack of personal responsibility for being the leader of the United States of America, for believing in science, for believing in the doctors, for not pointing at doctors that trying to make money and profit off of COVID-19 that has killed more than 230,000 fellow leadership.
Okay, let me ask you both now about immigration. Mayor, I can see white hair on your head. Pareho lang tayo. So, sorry, Rodney, I'm not really sure about your age. Pero kasi, we come from a generation where usong-uso yung katagang TNT, tago ng tago. You know, Filipinos who would go to the United States surreptitiously, hide there, and then eventually hope to secure a green card or a working permit or be allowed into the system and all that. What are your views as far as your parties are concerned when it comes to immigration, how it affects the Filipino dream, the dream of some Filipinos to be in the United States?
Mr. Mayor, I'll let you go.
Oh, okay. It's immigration is a very personal issue for me. My parents actually met at the U.S. Embassy in Manila, applying for visas to come over here.
Yun lang.
Back in the 60s, back in 1967, and also married to a Filipino immigrant, as well. You know, and also as a practicing immigration lawyer. Yeah, I know and I understand that a lot of the difficulties that the TNTs have to face, but America has created the law in such a way that if you follow the law, then everything flows from that. And unfortunately, when Filipinos come, when some Filipinos come here to the United States, they believe that once their feet touch the ground, everything is going to be okay. Everything's going to be hunky dory, and you know, unfortunately, it's not like that. It wasn't like in the olden days when my parents applied for visas. They just showed up at the embassy and pretty much asked for it. Now there's all kind. It is more complicated. It is more difficult to come over here to the United States. You know, especially from the Philippines, and it's set up in such a way that if you follow the law, everything flows from that. You know, and I know that there are great numbers of Filipinos who have been waiting in line there in the Philippines under certain immigration categories. Sometimes, you know, 5, 10 years or longer. And you know, if you want to, would it be fair to them if there was some kind of amnesty that was granted when Filipinos in the Philippines have been waiting patiently for their turn to come? And then finally get the necessary green card or necessary paperwork to enter the United States. It's set up in such a way such that if you follow the law, everything should be okay.
Already.
You know, all I will say is that I was born in the Philippines. Who has allowed more than 500 children stuck at the U.S.-Mexican border without their parents, completely separated, and has done absolutely nothing about it. So if you want to talk about immigration and what the president actually cares about when it comes to immigration, it is certainly the absolute last thing on his agenda. This is the same man who promised 4 years ago that Mexico was going to pay for the wall that he campaigned on, and he has not delivered to this day. This is the same man who continues to discriminate against classes of people, races of people. Immigration is not on the top of President Trump's agenda. I guarantee you that.
But let me ask the two of you, as my last question, let me ask the two of you, as far as you know, as far as the Phil community there is concerned, is immigration a key point or a key issue for the Phil community there when they cast their votes for either candidate?
Yes, absolutely.
I think to a certain extent, yes, but I think people on me.
So it still is a gut issue. I mean, the economy is still a gut issue. It's what you get to bring home.
It's certainly yes. I mean, in the end, you're going to look at your wallet, your checkbook. I mean, pre-COVID, America has been experiencing probably one of the best economies in the past half century. Low record unemployment across the board for African Americans, for Hispanic Americans, for women, and of course, Asian Americans.
Okay, maraming salamat sa ating mga kababayan, si Rodney Salinas, co-founder ng Filipino Young Professionals Group, at si Ron Falcone, dating mayor ng isang bayan sa Ohio. Maraming salamat, sirs, for joining us tonight.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Ingat po. And let's now go back to the newsroom for updates on social media. And joining us again is Sean Yao. Sean, what's the latest?
Well, the latest again is President or incumbent U.S. President Donald Trump. Ed, he is currently speaking live. So if you're interested, he is live on Facebook over there. I'm not going to press the play button because that's going to interfere with our technical. But yes, President Trump is live right now. As compared to Joe Biden, who about an hour ago already said he's putting a lid on it. He will not be making any more public appearances. That not tonight. So checking how some swing states are doing, let's take a quick look at Michigan. As we can see, Michigan is a little bit quiet. They're not making any big calls for either Trump or for Biden. If you take a look here, there's really not much going on in the swing state of Michigan. But if we take a look at Pennsylvania, of course, a lot of people are really looking at Pennsylvania. We can see it's very, very divided as of now. A lot of it, you know, sometimes some of the local news channels will call it out for Biden. Some will be calling it out for Trump. But so far, if we look at this from WTAJ-TV, that is a local network over in Pennsylvania, they're saying as results come in, here's how the numbers are doing so far. So far, it's bleeding red over there in Pennsylvania. Minnesota.
Okay, well, Sean,
yeah.
Sean, we're sorry, we'll have to break in.
No worries.
Trump is now delivering a speech. Let's take a listen.
They couldn't win, so they said, let's go to court. And did I predict this, Newt? Did I say this? I've been saying this from the day I heard they were going to send out tens of millions of ballots. I said exactly, because either they were going to win, or if they didn't win, they'll take us to court. So Florida was a tremendous victory, 377,000. Texas, as we said. Ohio, think of this. Ohio, a tremendous state, a big state. I love Ohio. We won by 8.1%, 461. Think of it. Almost 500,000 votes. North Carolina, big victory with North Carolina. And so we won there. We lead by 76,000 votes with almost nothing left. And all of a sudden, everything just stopped. This is a fraud on the American public. This is an embarrassment to our country. We were getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election. We did win this election. So our goal now is to ensure the integrity for the good of this nation. This is a very big moment. This is a major fraud in our nation. We want the law to be used in a proper manner. So we'll be going to the U.S. Supreme Court. We want all voting to stop. We don't want them to find any ballots at 4 o'clock in the morning and add them to the list, okay? It's a very sad moment. To me, this is a very sad moment, and we will win this, and as far as I'm concerned, we already have won it. So I just want to thank you, and I want to thank all of our support. I want to thank all of the people that worked with us, and Mr. Vice President, say a few words, please. Please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to join you in thanking more than 60 million Americans who have already cast their vote for 4 more years for President Donald Trump in the White House. And while the votes continue to be counted, we're going to remain vigilant, as the President said. The right to vote has been at the center of our democracy since the founding of this nation, and we're going to protect the integrity of the vote. But I really believe with all of my heart, with the extraordinary margins, Mr. President, that you've inspired in the states that you just described, and the way that you launched this movement across the country to make America great again, I truly do believe, as you do, that we are on the road to victory and we will make America great again. Thank you, Mr. President.
We will pause for a short break, so keep it here on One News. You're watching One News' special coverage of the U.S. elections. I'm Ed Lingao. And just a few minutes ago, we heard President Donald J. Trump saying that there's been massive fraud and that they are going to the Supreme Court to raise some legal questions with regard to the U.S. elections. Now, the COVID-19 pandemic has affected public activities around the world, including elections. But despite the continuous threat of the virus, some nations were able to push through with their polls. The details in this report by Maricel Halili.
The World Health Organization believes that in-person elections can be held safely amid the COVID-19 pandemic.
You cannot reduce the risk to zero, but what you can do is identify and manage those risks, especially where in-person voting is the choice of the country.
However, 66 nations and 8 territories have already postponed their elections due to possible spike in cases. According to the International Foundation for Electoral Systems, a total of 113 polling events across the globe have been put off. Despite the unfaltering status of the global health crisis, dozens of others have proceeded with their elections. In South Korea, the left-leaning ruling party won by landslide in April, turning the political tide in President Moon Jae-in's favor. Korea's National Election Commission urgently imposed measures, such as mandatory wearing of face masks and physical distancing. Over in Burundi, a small landlocked country in southern Africa, the reigning autocratic president for 15 years had been replaced. Throngs of voters, however, were seen standing shoulder to shoulder without face masks or gloves on the election day last May. The same goes with Belarus, where infections neared 70,000 today strongman Alexander Lukashenko declared victory. The election result prompted thousands of Belarusians to take to the streets in protest, claiming the election was rigged. Meanwhile, New Zealand's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern recently delivered the biggest election victory for her political party in 50 years. The size and number of voting places were increased, while those in isolation were able to vote using telephone dictation service. In the U.S., poll officials shifted voting from just one day to facilitating widespread mail-in balloting procedures across the country. Voters were also encouraged to cast their ballots ahead, either by mail or physically, with minimum health protocols imposed. The COVID-19 pandemic has been the center of this year's presidential campaign, with over 80 million ballots already cast.
We will terminate the virus with science, medicine, and groundbreaking therapies and cures. I watched Joe Biden speak yesterday. All he does is talk about COVID.
Donald Trump waved the white flag, surrendered to the virus. But the American people don't give up. We don't give in. Unlike Donald Trump, we're not going to surrender to this virus.
For News 5, Maricel Halili, we are One News.
Incumbent U.S. President Donald Trump tried to capitalize on his strong base for his 2020 re-election campaign. However, voter turnout continues to be a challenge in key states with rival Joe Biden's strong showing. That's according to the assessment of political analyst Dindo Manhit during his interview with One News' The Chief. Manhit says the pandemic affected Trump's chance as it caused the suffering of many Americans and dealt a huge blow to their entire economy.
He was a highly polarizing and divisive president, and he built a base around that. But of course, the global pandemic affected his stature with his base, so it's slowly grown. But when you look at economic data from the U.S., did they really become stronger during the time of President Trump? Only the stock market went up. But generally, the economy, it was consistent with what he inherited with Obama.
Although Manhit argues that regardless of who wins the U.S. presidential election, their stance against China will remain the same.
It will not be more transactional or personal. With what has happened with Trump, it's all about him and his belief. But in terms of, you'd say, hard position with regards to China and its aggressiveness in the region, I think there will be
the same.
It will be the same,
Yes.
but maybe what Biden would do is bring more Asia Pacific country, or what they call now countries within the Indo-Pacific region.
And to help us put the context in the 2020 U.S. elections as well as the events leading to the elections, we have with us political strategist Malu Tikia. Good afternoon, Ms. Malu, and thank you for joining us tonight. Well, this afternoon. Ms. Malu, can you hear us? Oh, we are having a bit of a problem technically. Ms. Malu, can you hear us? We'll come back with Ms. Malu Tikia in a few minutes while we sort out the technical issues. We just don't have some audio as of yet, although we did have audio a while ago. Some interesting things developing along the time. Anyway, the Black Lives Matter movement and the government's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic became among the biggest issues leading up to the U.S. elections. Greg Gregorio tells us more.
Months leading up to the U.S. elections, discussions on racial discrimination intensified. Black Lives Matter movement started as a social media hashtag and evolved into street protests, calling for the defunding of the police as a way of addressing systematic racism. The global uprise was sparked by the death of George Floyd at the hands of Minneapolis police back in May.
In terms of the active movement to defund the police and move towards abolition of the police, I don't really care what the president's office has to say about it because they are a tool. They are not the weapon.
The presidential candidates were asked to speak about racism in America during the debates. Biden said institutional racism exists, but combating racial inequality would be a priority of his administration. Trump, on the other hand, continued to defend the police and claimed to be the least racist person in the room. Now, BLM's influence faces a test as Americans cast their vote on Election Day. But the biggest issue hounding the elections is arguably the current administration's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. Nearly 10 million Americans have been infected and more than 230,000 were killed. Trump has been criticized for downplaying the severity of the public health crisis. The incumbent president has been holding in-person rallies which ignored COVID-19 safety measures. And in October, the president tested positive for the disease. For News 5, Greg Gregorio, we are One News.
Well, everybody's been talking about the swing states. So pag-usapan po natin yung tinatawag nating swing states. Ito po yung mga estado kung saan dikit, neck and neck yung labanan ng Republicans at mga Democrats at madaling magbago yung resulta ng eleksyon. Remember, it's a winner-take-all system in the electoral votes of the United States. And in the state where a candidate wins, automatically he gets all the electoral votes in that particular state. We're talking, of course, about more than 500, in this particular case, 538 electoral votes spread across 50 states. And of course, the magic majority number is 270 votes. Ito po yung itsura ng botohan noong 2016 elections, yung nakaraang eleksyon kung saan nanalo si Donald Trump. The red states that you can see, that is where the Republicans won with Donald Trump. And of course, the blue states here are the states where Hillary Clinton won for the Democrats. And you might notice that the states that have the biggest blue margins are the ones in the coastal states. But anyway, tignan po natin, for example, California, meron siyang 55 electoral votes. Texas, we're talking about the population here. Texas over here has 36. Florida over here has 29 electoral votes. And New York State has 29 electoral votes as well. These are the states with the biggest number of electoral votes. So yun po yung medyo matimbang talaga ng mga estado. Illinois and Pennsylvania have 20 and Ohio has 18. Pansinin po ninyo na mamayani ang blue color doon sa mga coastal states as we were saying a while ago, kagaya ng Washington State over there and California. In the East Coast naman, you're talking about New York and Vermont and Maine. Those are clearly blue. The Republicans, malakas naman sila sa tinatawag na Middle America, ang gitna ng kontinente. Ngayon, kung may swing states, meron naman pong tinatawag na safe states. If you have swing states, you also have what you call the safe states. These are the states where matatag na po yung kapit ng isang partido. For example, California has always been known as the bailiwick of the Democrats, and Texas has also always been known as the bailiwick of the Republicans. These are what you might call the safe states for those parties. Ito naman po yung mga binabantayan na mga swing states ngayon. Importante po sila dahil dikit po yung labanan sa mga estadong ito at pabago-bago yung kanilang mga boto. For example, Florida. Up here is Florida. In the 2012 presidential elections, panalo po rito ang Democrat na si Obama. Pero pagdating ng 2016, panalo na po rito si Trump at ang laki ng epekto nito sa bilangan ng electoral votes, 29 electoral votes po yung dala ng Florida. Ganun din po, the same goes for Pennsylvania over here where Obama won in 2012 and then we had the shift to the Republicans in the 2016 elections. 20 votes po yung dala niyan. Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Iowa. Lahat po sila tumawid ng bakod at pinanalo ang mga Republicans from 2012 going to 2016. Ito po mga swing states na ito, may combined electoral votes na 125 or more or less mga 23% ng total electoral votes ng buong bansa. Malaking bagay po yan sa isang labanan na dikit na dikit. Ito rin po madalas tinututukan ng kampanya ng mga kandidato dahil kung makuha nila mga ito, marami silang electoral votes na siguradong makukuha. And now to help us put in the context of the 2020 U.S. elections as well as the events leading to the polls, we have with us political strategist Malu Tikia. Malu, good afternoon and thank you for joining us.
Hi Ed, good afternoon. Salamat sa imbitasyon.
Yes, ma'am. Well, it's important to bring you in, I think, kasi, looking at your background, you had experience working in the U.S. Congress. You were nakasawsaw kayo sa U.S. politics for a long time. You worked, I think, in the campaign of John Kerry as well as even Bill Clinton. And then also for a while, you were working for a Republican candidate as well.
Yeah, that's right. Itong election ngayon, malapit, maraming binago. Sabi nga ng karamihan, math and map. Siguro ang kailangan maintindihan ng ating nanonood, hindi ho pareho ang sistema ng eleksyon ng Pilipinas at ng Estados Unidos. Sa Estados Unidos po, hindi po popular vote, may electoral college. Bakit may electoral college? Kasi ayaw nilang may mahahalal na plurality. Gusto nila, kuha mo yung majority. Ang dito sa eleksyon na ito, dahil nga may pandemic, marami ang nag-mail-in, yung mail-in ballots, compared sa election day ballots. So, makikita mo, ang isa pang naiiba sa Pilipinas, tayo, iisa lamang ang election code. Sa Amerika, bawat state may
50 election codes.
Oo. Tapos, ang nakakagulat dyan, may 21 plus DC na pwede kang mag-register at bumoto on the same time. Sa atin, kailangan rehistrado ka bago ka makaboto. So yung mga ganong nuances, napakahirap mong mag-predict or with certain accuracy. Kaya napaka-importante yung data modeling. Kasi kung makikita mo, pag nagsara, meron na silang count na ilan ba yung what do you call this, early votes, ilan ba yung election day votes. Kasi pag ang election day votes ay predominantly leaning sa Republican, samantalang yung
mail-in votes,
early votes predominantly Democrat. Bakit? Kasi 'di ba ang strategiya kasi ng Democrats yung pandemic.
Yeah.
So huwag kayong lalabas, huwag tayong magkakampanya ng
Stay at home and cast your vote through the mail.
Yes, yes. So pag ganon, makikita mo nga yung kampanya, wala namang usapan ng issues eh. Nasira yung debate, pagkatapos ang nangyari, hindi na persuasion eh, hindi kampanya ng persuasion. It's a campaign to get out the votes. So ang ginawa nitong incumbent, talagang binayo niya yung base niya. Nakita mo naman sa mga rallies, ang dami. Ang daming lumabas. So the higher the turnout, the better for them. The higher the mail-in ballots, mabuti sa Democrats. Critical yun.
Ma'am, let me ask you about
critical
that before we move on kasi baka mamalimutan natin eh. You
Yes,
were
yes.
talking earlier about the mail-in votes and a big chunk of the strategy of the Democrats is to use the mailing-in system eh. But at the same time
Yes.
po, the mail-in system brings with it a degree of delay in the counting kasi some states count later, put it in the last priority in terms of counting. Unahin muna yung mga,
Yes,
mga walk-in.
yan yung kaso ng Pennsylvania. Ang Pennsylvania hindi mabilis mag-count kasi ang inuuna ng Pennsylvania yung election day voter.
Yung walk-in.
Yung early vote, tatapusin muna nila yung bumoto ng election day at saka nila bubuksan yung mail-in. So that can drag. Kaya nga ang parating sinasabi, sino yung critical sa election? Si Pennsylvania. Kasi tinitingnan nila, paano ba at what point, ngayon lumalabas na, kune-question yung signature. Tama ba yung signature na nakakalip dun sa balota? Maaalala nyo yung si Al Gore, di ba, Chad? Yung hanging Chad.
Yeah.
So ito ngayon signature na nakalinya dun sa balota. So sa tingin ko yung Pennsylvania magkakaroon niya ng litigation. Yung Ohio, mabilis siya magbilang. Bakit? Dahil inuuna niya yung mail-in. So, nakapila ka doon, nagbibilang na sila ng mail-in. Kaya nga yung tapo ng boto sa bilangan, makikita mo yung mapa. Again, math and math, 270, tama yung sinabi mo. Yung mapa, titingnan mo. Nagiging blue, nagiging purple, nagiging pink, nagiging red. Bakit? Kasi kung ang binilang ng una ay ang mail-in ballot at yung mail-in may several permutation. Merong state na may drive-thru, merong state na absentee. So lahat ng permutation na yan, pag binilang mo yun ng nauna, natural predominantly blue.
Yeah.
Kasi yun yung strategiya ng Democrats. Bumoto kayo sa mail-in ballots. So, critical yun. Ang another critical na kailangan tingnan, hindi kasi naiintindihan ng Pilipino, meron silang tinatawag doon na party registration. So, meron kang registered Democrat, meron kang registered Republican, at meron yung tinatawag na no party. Ang registered Democrats is 45%. Ang registered Republican is 30%. Ang no party is 23.4%. Noong 2016, critical yan. Ngayon, hindi masyado kasi makikita mo nagko-consolidate talaga sa blue or sa red. So, napaka-importante ng independent at swing voters kasi yun yung sa notion ng battleground at swing states. Papasok doon. So, kung ikaw, kunyari, ako'y registered Republican, ina-expect ng mga tao, boboto ako Republican. Pero pwede akong mag-swing eh.
Yeah.
Depende sa mangyayari doon sa state. Kaya dapat ang pagtingin mo, state by state.
Yeah. Because it's a state that really casts the vote eh. Diba? In the end, it's a state that votes.
Oo. Tapos importante rin maintindihan natin ang difference ng popular votes at electoral college. May nagtanong nga sa akin ano daw ang basehan ng electoral college. Nasa U.S. Constitution po yan. At dinefine nila ang proseso ng pagbibilang. Nakakatawa, doon sa 50 states, meron dalawa na split electoral votes.
Yeah, this is Maine and Nebraska.
Na kung saan makukuha mo yung plurality, pero kukunin mo rin yung plurality ng district para alam mo kung... So pwede sila mag-split. Okay? Again, nasa state constitution nila yon. Critical siguro rin tingnan natin yung geographical. Kasi, katulad ng sinabi ko kanina, si Vice President Biden, talagang nag-concentrate siya dun sa city. Di ba yung gitna ng bawat state maraming botante? Itong si Trump ay talagang ginalugad niya ang rural. Ang sinasabi nga, working class, upper Midwest, Great Lakes, Sun Belt. Yun ang... So may strategy siya pagbaba niya. Ang strategy niya hindi kayo para kumbinsihin. Ang strategy na yung base ko lumabas at bumoto kayo. So makikita natin yung lapit ng mga boto. In terms of the Democrats, maganda rin naman yung performance ni Biden dahil meron siyang mga ibang lugar na naibalik sa blue.
Coming from 2016, you mean?
Oo, from 2016 kasi again, likability. Hindi siya masyadong controversial. Pag titingnan mo si Biden, nasa gitna. Very centrist ang policy niya, nagre-reach out siya. So maganda yung communication niya. Si Harris, kita mo talaga nasa left of center. So makikita mo yung trying to reach out to their base. Napakahirap sa pandemic. So yung pandemic really has a very important role. Ginawa ng strategy ng isang kandidato, in which case si incumbent Trump. Nakakatuwa rin tingnan na ang pinag-aawayan na lang naman talaga is all down to North Carolina, Florida, and Ohio. Ang Ohio at Florida mukhang naibigay na. Yung North Carolina, nag-aaway-away pa. So sa dulo, maiipit doon sa lalo na sa absentee voting, di ba yung mga sundalo, nagpadala ng kwan. Hihintayin mo yon kasi kung hindi mo hihintayin, doon ngayon yung controversial decision, nomination ng bagong justice sa Supreme Court ng US.
Ma'am, let me bring that in. I think that's very interesting. I mean, a lot of people are interested in that, especially after Trump made an announcement kanina that he will go to the Supreme Court. Ano implications mo?
Well, sa tingin ko, matatagalan pa yung, baka umabot sa December kasi ang bilangan ng Electoral College.
Yeah, the actual voting.
Oo. Pagkatapos kung may connection yun, kung magulo pa sa Supreme Court at wala pang desisyon, technically, under the Constitution nila, ang House of Representatives, ang bawat isang member nila ay may isang boto para magdesisyon sino presidente. At ang Senado may isang boto para magdesisyon kung sino ang vice presidente. Yun ay aabot kung magkagulo-gulo.
Yeah. This is the 12th Amendment.
So, yes. Pagkatapos ang mangyayari niyan, magdidesisyon talaga ang Kongreso. In which case, lumalabas na dun sa laro ng kampanya, pumupunta na tayo doon sa issue ng litigation at sa issue ng politika. Critical yun dahil sa House of Representatives nag-gain sila ng 5 seats ang Democrats. Sa Senado, hindi pa masyadong clear yung delineation ng lines, pero si Mitch McConnell, ginastusan ng malaki, nakabalik. So merong mga sasabihin mo mga pangalang matibay na may isang natalo yata sa Senado, may isang nakabalik. So makikita natin napakahalaga ng role ng bawat branches ng gobyerno. At saka, Ed, siguro ang isa kong gustong sabihin, walang Republican president na nanalo sa White House na hindi dinala ang Ohio.
Okay, let's look at Ohio now.
Republican, yung trend na yan dates back to Lincoln, 1860. So kung Republican ka na Pangulo, importante sa yung Ohio. Kaya siguro makikita natin yung reaction ni President Trump na ine-explore na niya yung legal remedy dito sa mga nangyayari. Again, ako as a political observer, nalulungkot ako dahil dati ang US ang tinitingnan natin na modelo.
Oo nga eh.
Di ba? Parati natin sinasabi, ay naku, gusto natin
Parang
maging ganun.
buti pa sila, ganun marami dati.
Oo. Ngayon, may isang nag-comment sa akin na parang third world country daw dahil dyan sa nangyayari sa politika. Pero kailangan mo ring makita na nag-iiba ang demographics. Ang dati walang black na very few in percentage-wise ang bumoboto sa Republican. Dati ang working class Democrats yan. So makikita mo yung Latino, nung panahon ni Obama, talagang lumabas yan. Tapos nawala. Ngayon, naghahati-hati na. Kahit ang Asian Americans
Ang sabi niyo nga dati, ang core base ng Democrats dati were the Latinos and the blacks, but now that vote is split.
Yes. So makikita mo very divisive si President Trump. Si Vice President Biden, Ang isa pang akala ko magkakaroon ng coattail, yung pagpasok ni former President Obama. Parang ang liit na na-convert nung pumasok si President Obama. So yung mga strategiya, makikita mo lumalabas na konti-konti, pero sa Republican ground game. Talagang ground ang ginawa nila. Wala kang makitang messaging Ang messaging ng mga videos niya, pwede yung messaging na yon despite na presidente si President Trump dahil ganun yung ugali. Dahil nakilala na siya ng tao na ganun. So sa iba, ilagay mo yung ganong, magaganda yung mga political ads niya towards the end, pero parang sa isang operative, sasabihin mo, presidente nagganon, and yet, nag-resonate sa mga botante, nag-resonate sa kanya ang peace and order. Despite the fact na ang daming issues dun sa mga pulis ng bawat state. So makikita mo na to a certain degree nag-tone down siya nung second debate. So yung theater of war, quote-unquote, sa politika.
Theater of war, I like that phrase.
Oo. Magaling ang pagkakalaro ng isang marketing genius na katulad ni President Trump. Hindi ko sinasabi na maganda yung ginawa, pero makikita mo talaga ano nangyari sa issues. Di ba? Ano nangyari? Wala, talagang kwan lang.
Na-maximize yung theater, kumaga.
Oo.
Na-maximize yung theater.
Oo, get out the vote. Big rallies. So, imagery. Marketing Marketing kayo, di ba, si Trump? So, imagery yung...
Yes, sir. Ma'am, my last question po, it has to do with your post. Can you explain your earlier post na most votes are actually in the middle? The fight is in the margins, especially when it is too close to call. Tell us about that.
Look at the map of the United States. They're all in the middle.
Yeah.
They're all bunched there. Yung nasa extreme, yun ang liberal
yun
democracy.
Ang blue, yung gilid, yung coastal
which is
states.
represented by big cities like, or big states
California,
like New York and California. Pero, ang Amerikano, nasa gitna, conservative.
It's the homeland, the Middle America.
Yes, the rustic, di ba? Kaya ikaw mag-iisip ka, pag nanggaling ka sa Amerika, nakapunta ka ng California o New York, sasabihin mo, ay, nanggaling ako sa Amerika. Pero pag pumunta ka sa Wyoming, Wisconsin, kahit yung nasa Great Lakes, ibang-iba yung tinatawag sa lengguwahe natin, parang siya. It's a raw land. You wouldn't think that you're in the U.S. But this is America. And to a certain degree, more and more people from those areas, rural, although there is a suburban sprawl already, ang rural nasa gitna lang. So parati kong sinasabi sa mga kumakandidato, huwag kayong pupunta sa left or sa right. Punta lang kayo sa gitna. Kasi ang napaka-importante sa mga botante, what does it mean for me? In terms of job, in terms of the economy, in terms of health, wala namang left and right dun Nasa gitna lahat.
Ma'am Malu Tikia, ma'am, maraming salamat po for joining us tonight. As usual, a lot of insights from Ma'am Malu. Thank you po.
Salamat, Ed.
And let's now check in on what the two main candidates are saying on social media so far. Sean Yao is now live in the newsroom to give us updates. Sean, are we seeing posts from Biden following the speech of Donald Trump?
Yes, Ed, we indeed are seeing a post. Actually, it's one post from Joe Biden. This was posted like right after the live speech of President Trump. Here it goes. It's actually a very short 30-second clip. This was actually taken from his speech earlier, around 2 hours ago in Wilmington, Delaware. So it's actually cut from that long address that he had earlier on. He's basically saying that he's still in the game and the fight isn't over until all the early votes and all the mail-in votes are counted, because he again said that this is unprecedented. That's basically what this 30-second clip has to say. And this was, of course, in reaction to what President Trump already or said in his address. And this is, of course, a reaction to that speech. So if we take a look over here, he was actually first to go on and give a speech. His camp put a lid on giving any more live appearances tonight, and that's why this is the only reply we got from Joe Biden. If we take a look at interactions, this has been consistent since before Trump went on, actually. Donald Trump getting 3 times always more reactions, or double the reactions of, or 3 times actually, 3 times more reactions than Joe Biden. Again, I cannot see whether this is good or bad, but he's definitely being Donald Trump in a sense that he does get a lot of buzz on social media. Now, that's all I have for you thus far. Back to you.
We'll be back with more stories after the short break. You're watching One News's special coverage of the U.S. elections. I'm Ed Lingao. Let's circle back to issues related to the Filipino-American community in the United States. And joining us live is Veli Salgado Hall. She is part of the Asian American Advisory Council. And John Melegrito, one of the co-founders of the NAFA.org, an umbrella organization for PhilAms. Thank you po for joining us tonight. And we apologize for the long wait, but we hope to make it worth your while with this discussion. First of all, let's talk about President Trump's announcement just a few minutes ago. Your feedback po muna. Ma'am Veli, kayo po. How is your response to the President's announcement? Ma'am Veli, can you hear us?
Mr. Lingo, first of all, my middle name is not Salgado, it's Sandalo. It's Sandalo.
I apologize po.
I didn't quite...
Mukhang naputol tayo. Okay. Mr. John, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Kayo po. Kayo na lang po unahin natin. Naputol po si Ma'am Veli. Kayo po, were you able to monitor President Trump's speech just a few minutes ago?
Yeah, I heard part of it because I was waiting here, so I wasn't able to listen to the full speech. But from what I gather is he was already declaring victory.
Opo. Yeah, that is confirmed that he did declare that. He said they have won.
Yeah, which is premature because not all the votes are counted. So that's really rather strange that he would do that because I think the American people expect to have all the votes counted, and there are still some remaining states where, because by law, they cannot begin counting, especially the mail-in ballots like in Pennsylvania, until tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And the secretaries of state of this battleground states have made it very, very clear that they are committed to counting all the ballots that have been sent in, and that might take a day, 2 days, or even until Friday. So I think it's premature to declare victory until all the votes are counted. And when I heard the president say that, it's really disappointing because it's basically saying the remaining votes don't count.
Mm-hmm. Pero po, sir, whatever the case is, the president is saying that he is going to the Supreme Court. Ang sabi niya, we are going to the U.S. Supreme Court, and so I suppose we can expect that he is going to file a challenge with the Supreme Court, which I suppose is a bit unusual considering that he declared himself a winner.
Exactly. And I wish that the decision of the American people be heard first before any kind of litigation occurs. So this is really disappointing coming from the president that he should talk about litigation when in fact he should wait until all the votes are counted.
Mm-hmm. From your end po, although we might have the same sources, but from your end, is it clear to you in the United States how far down the line are we when it comes to the counting of the votes? Are we anywhere near the end of the counting?
No, because even the secretaries of state of Pennsylvania said it might take until Friday. So we're not even close, we're not even close to counting all the votes because, as you know, there was an unprecedented surge of early voting, in the last 2 weeks that exceeded even the number of votes cast, in 2016. So you can imagine the tremendous, huge amount of ballots that need to be counted carefully, accurately, and ensuring that all those votes are counted. So no, we're not very close to getting the results because the secretaries of state themselves said it might take until Friday to get all of those votes counted.
Okay, let's welcome back Ms. Veli Hall. Ma'am, your perspective po, are we anywhere near the end of the count?
Yeah. Okay. First of all, I didn't not hear the entirety of the president, what caused him to go out and announce it. I did not hear all of his statement. And what I heard clearer was that they're going to the court.
Yes, ma'am.
there are so many votes still there need to be counted, and the Judicial Watch has caught and has filed some cases against ballots that were mailed and with 10 names or 50 names even. They were caught in Philadelphia and some areas. And so I am not so sure what's the cause of this supposedly litigation that the president has brought up. So I really didn't hear the entire thing.
Yes, ma'am. But ma'am, sir, whatever the case is, if the president brings it up to the Supreme Court, it brings up the account to the Supreme Court, then we could expect, I suppose, a delay in the official declaration of who the winner is. Is that a correct assessment?
Well, you know what happened in Bush and Gore during that election when Florida was contested. I mean, we didn't know the official result until later in December when the Supreme Court finally made a decision in favor of George W. Bush. So yes, if it takes weeks, to get a clear and accurate count, then that's how it should be, because it's only fair to the American people who went out and cast their ballots to assure them that, in fact, their ballots, each one of them, every one of them, should be counted accurately. So if it takes another week or 2 weeks, then it should be, because there are absentee ballots, for instance, or there are overseas ballots coming from veterans, right? And this is something that should be expected, and they need to also be counted accurately and be accounted for.
But sir, I'm afraid we lost Ma'am Veli again. But sir, anyway, but isn't there any concern?
I'm here. I'm
yes,
back.
ma'am.
I'm back.
Can you hear us? Okay. Let's bring back Ma'am Veli. Ma'am Veli, let's put her back on the screen.
Okay.
Well, ma'am, I was going to ask this. Isn't there any concern that any delay in the declaration of the winner of these elections would lead to some sort of instability? I mean, of course, there was reference to the year 2000, the 2000 elections between Al Gore and George Bush. But it does seem that America is much more divided in 2020 than it was in 2000. So is there any concern there?
What's your question? Concern about the division of people?
Is there any concern that?
Or you're concerned about the delay of the vote?
Yes, ma'am. Is there any concern on your part that a delay, any substantial delay in the declaration of the winner of the 2020 elections would feed into the divisiveness that is now that we can now see and lead to some sort of instability?
Well, I was just looking at my iPhone, and I was informed that some, I think, not in Philadelphia, but in Michigan and Wisconsin, the counting has been stopped, and then also in Pennsylvania. So that means people who mailed in their votes. I know there was a surge of mailing in the vote. It will not get there in probably 2 or 3 days. So as June was saying, we may get the result next week, maybe next Friday. So it is, people are waiting and waiting. We will be waiting for the result, and then there's litigation, and this will drag on for just like what happened with that Chad vote in Florida a long time ago during Bush administration. So yeah.
Historically,
this will be a long drag.
Historically, we never really knew the official results on election day, historically, because they had to be certified by the Secretary of State. So, there's an illusion that on election day, we would know the results. And certainly that's not true, because they have to be officially certified by the Secretary of State. Now, what is unusual in this election is because of the tremendous surge of early votes, mail-in votes, absentee ballots, early voting, right? That's what makes this election so different. And in a way, it's very heartening to see a lot of people go out and vote, whether it's for the Republicans or for the Democrats, I commend the people who fell in line despite COVID. They took precautions. So in a way, it's very inspiring to see millions of people send in their ballots, fall in line, even if it takes hours through bad weather. But at the same time, because these people committed to cast their ballots and endure the heat or the weather, then it's only fair that all those votes be counted. And if it takes a week, then it should, it shouldn't matter. Because at the end of the day, each of those votes need to be counted.
Yes, sir. Well, I think everybody agrees with that. All the votes need to be counted.
Agreed.
But I suppose my question is this: of
Correct.
course, you have the
Correct.
question of counting the votes, which we all agree on. But the added layer of litigation with the Supreme Court, wouldn't that further delay whatever delay there already is with the counting of the votes? And wouldn't that add to any concern on anybody's part that this could lead to some instability in the American system?
Well, of course, there's always been that concern, even weeks and months before the elections. As you know, there's been voter intimidation, right? The Trump administration tried to delegitimize, for instance, 3 million votes in Texas. They've been doing all kinds of things to suppress the vote, to keep people from voting. And they themselves, had made a statement that said, the less people vote, the better for us. So certainly with statements like that, where you have the president undermining mail-in ballots, right? Then certainly with a uncertain result not being resolved immediately, inevitably, yes, there would be worries, there would be tensions, there would be anxiety. But I think most Americans will need to be patient. And I think that's what Vice President Biden said. We have to be patient, right? We have to be calm. And certainly he was not instigating, any kind of disorder. He's basically calling on his supporters to be calm and be patient and wait for the results.
Ma'am Veli, let me bring you in po. I understand that you support President Trump. Yes, ma'am.
Let me answer what just John said.
Go ahead po.
The suppression means because there were. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Okay. So the suppression means because there were several ballots with the names of dead people that were mailed to Texas, that were mailed to Pennsylvania, and they were caught. So they call it suppression. So that's really the thing there. There's a lot of people who, not just dead people, who receive ballots 3 or 4 times. I have a cousin who lives in Lynchburg. He received three ballots under his name. And so there are some illegalities in there, and that's probably people call them suppression. So anyway, what was your question, Mr. Lingao?
Yes, ma'am. In line with what you were saying a while ago, from your perspective, is there already cause to question whatever results are coming out of the 2020 presidential elections? You were just talking a while ago about.
Yes.
So you think
Yes.
it's substantial already in number and nature? These questionable ballots?
There are, because they even found the whole mailbox of votes from the absentee ballots from the military were thrown in the garbage can. From the military votes were found in Pennsylvania in the big garbage can.
Mm-hmm. But
So,
yes, ma'am.
so this is really,
that
there's
is cause
a
for
lot
concern.
of questions about the mail-in ballots.
Yes, ma'am. That would certainly
that's a
be
big
cause for
concern,
concern.
correct.
But ma'am, at the same time, just to play the devil's advocate here, at
Yes.
the same time, who would be in a position to junk that mailbox full of military ballots? Wouldn't it be? I don't know. I'm talking from the point of view of a Filipino in the Philippines. If there's a problem with the ballot boxes here, then we point at the COMELEC or the people who are in charge, which is the government, of ensuring the delivery of the ballots.
Well, what do you call this? the post office, they have this union. So this union, just like the teachers union, there's several union, and they are not under the, naantok na yata ako, yung buhok ko na ano na, hindi ko na alam.
Okay lang po. Sige po. Sige lang
The
po. Tuloy lang.
union, antok na ako, madaling araw na kasi anong oras na ba?
Sorry po. Sige po.
So,
Well, okay
they
naman.
are under
Duty
the
pa naman.
union. So they followed what the union would say.
Mhm. Mhm. Yes, ma'am.
No, I think we're doing a lot of speculation here because, three states, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, right? I think it's better to really, as I said, be patient and be calm and not anticipate too much of the worst case scenarios because, certainly it's more newsworthy to talk about worst case scenarios. But I think the American people are confident, they are calm, they are patient, and I'd rather wait for another week until all of these votes are counted. So I think we're putting the cart before the horse and making too much about this litigation and these court battles because it's only confusing and making people anxious. So my take is, I'm confident that when the votes are counted, the winner will be assured that that person will be the choice of the American people. That's what I'm confident about.
Ma'am Veli, kayo po, assuming that, well, not assuming, pero when the Electoral College finally casts its vote, would you be able, from your point of view, would you be able to say with confidence na this is the vote of the people?
Well, they have got several ballots already. That's the Judicial Watch is an independent organization that caught several of that brought in some, filed some cases about the ballots that were caught, like 20 ballots in just one name, and also some of them are dead people who voted. And so that makes you suspicious of what's really going on.
Yes, ma'am. Well,
And
certainly
that
cause
needs
for
to
concern.
be straightened out.
Yes, ma'am. Certainly cause for concern. Although in a broader context po, you are also looking at 230 million voting age people in the United States. So it goes back to my question na are these causes for concern substantial enough to shift the vote either which way? I mean, are they enough to be cause of concern in the total final count?
I don't know. I don't know.
Well, this
Because
charges have
it's
been-
not
have been-
the
Excuse me, Valley. These charges have been thoroughly investigated and they were thrown out because they were negligible. These accusations of massive fraud, has been brought up ever since, 4 years ago when President Trump questioned those 3 million popular votes and claiming that they were all votes by illegal voters or voters who were not eligible. So this has been going on, this trying to sow confusion about voters. So, it's really unfortunate that rather than concentrate on making sure that votes are counted properly, instead of, bringing up these accusations that really are not credible and have been proven to be not credible, then I think it does a disservice to the American people to constantly raise, this specter of fraud and cheating and votes being rigged, right?
Okay, final words po from
June, I
both
will
of
be
you.
be more than happy to show you copies from the Judicial Watch and what some courts, local courts, have decided when they show evidences of these votes. I will be more than happy to email it to you, John.
So far the courts, which are actually Republican-appointed judges, so far these Republican judges have thrown out all these cases. So these are nonpartisan decisions, which shows that at the end of the day, they are remarkably, you know, sure that all of these accusations of fraud, you know, are invalidated and considered to be not credible.
Okay. Well, maraming salamat po, Ma'am Veli
As
Sandalo
I
Hall.
said, I'll be more than happy to email it to you tomorrow. I'll
You
be
don't
more
have
than
to
happy to email it to you, John.
You don't have to convince me, Bella. You don't have to convince me. It's the American people that needs to be convinced. I don't need to be convinced.
Ma'am, maraming salamat po. Sir, maraming salamat po.
Well, because
ingat na lang po tayo. At
right.
let's hope for the best and no, sorry. Let's hope for the never mind. Sige. Let's just work for the best. Maraming salamat po si Ma'am Veli Sandalo Hall ng Asian American Advisory Council at si John Malagrito, co-founder ng nafaa.org, umbrella organization ng mga Fil-Americans. Maraming salamat for joining us today. We will be back with more stories. Keep it here on One News. You're watching One News's special coverage of the U.S. elections. I'm Ed Lingao. A political analyst from the University of the Philippines says a Trump presidency might be a better option for the Southeast Asian region. And to get more of her insights, we have, of course, UP Political Science Professor Dr. Clarita Carlos. Ma'am, thank you po for joining us, Dr. Carlos.
Hi, good afternoon, Ed.
Good afternoon po. Ma'am, I also read that post of yours. I think it was on October 28 when you posted that the Trump presidency may be good for the region. And just to add to that, I also read that at least one politician said that a Trump presidency will be good for the Philippines but bad for the world. Of course, that's his perspective. Kayo po, can you please elaborate on why you think a Trump presidency would be good for us?
Yeah, you will notice in that post, I really specified the region. I even had an asterisk there.
Yes,
because I did not talk about the Philippines. Essentially, I'm saying that since our independence in 1946, no one country had espoused our Sabah claim or supported our claim to the contested South China Sea, exempt this administration.
Mm-hmm.
The reason being that its interest, strategic geopolitical interest in the region coincided with our interests. That's the only reason.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said that, yes, so a Trump presidency, if it will continue with Pompeo's initiative, will be better for the region. Now, aside from this consideration, you will notice, Ed, some people are claiming that Trump does not have any pattern. He says shooting here, there, and everywhere in his foreign policy.
Mm-hmm.
He has a pattern, actually. He has a pattern of pragmatism. Sometimes it's uber pragmatism and cashier diplomacy. You remember he was asking Merkel to increase his defense expenditure because he looked at the numbers kasi businessman to Ed eh.
Yeah.
Sabi niya, why am I carrying the burden of the defense of Europe? I mean, Germany, France, etc. All these countries are not even ratcheting up their defense expenditure according to NATO agreement.
Yeah, he's
so
looking
you
at
see,
cost benefit.
Dalawang strando kanyang foreign policy.
Yeah. Ma'am, pero what if it's a Biden presidency? Would the United States change its direction as far as the region is concerned, from your perspective?
Again, we will be in the back burner. Kasi I heard Biden, remember Biden has been there for 1,000 years, and he will follow the traditional path. He even said that he will not talk to Kim Jong-un, unlike what Trump did. And I thought that was, monumental for Trump to really, do the extraordinary way of meeting with Kim Jong-un and, preventing the increasing nuclearization of North Korea.
Mm-hmm.
That's something he even said. He is open to meeting with Rouhani. All these are iconoclastic moves, and while people might be, might not accept his thuggish way, parang kasi sanggano no? Parang,
the idiosyncrasies sometimes get more airplay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But ako kasi, Ed, I'm Machiavellian. I'd like to see the results, and the results seem to be quite acceptable.
Let me zoom in on North Korea and Kim Jong-un. Kasi there seems to have been a drastic or radical reversal in the Trump policy there. At one point, Trump was talking about raining fire on North Korea, and the next moment he's talking to Kim Jong-un like they're the best of friends. So some people are saying na on one hand it's good that he's made friends with Kim Jong-un. On the other hand, baka naman his foreign policy might be a bit too unstable and too off the cuff to be reliable. Or what do you think po?
Kasi Trump being such an unseasoned politician, he didn't quite appreciate the dynamics of diplomacy. Mm-hmm. And he just went straight forward and said, why don't I have a burger with you, with Kim Jong-un? He said that, no? And, Ed, if you look at the empirical literature, I teach a course kasi in elites and politics. The personal relationships between or among leaders is very, very important.
Yes.
It really adds to the cordiality, no? Where siguro, magbubungguan sila, he is going to give way. And I like that. He has already planted that. You pay attention kasi to the body language. He taps Kim Jong-un sa shoulder. No, hindi yung patronizing, no? Tapos when he shook hands with him, hindi ba usually si Trump ang bastos-bastos niya pa nag-shake na hinihila ka niya, di ba?
Makikipag-ano, pulong braso sa'yo eh.
He did not do that with Kim Jong-un. So, I think if he wins, he will continue with that. And naman si Kim Jong-un kailangan lang ng konting lambing mo dyan. And he really has sent feelers that he would like to be part of the international community. And that is good, again, for the region.
Also, in your post, you talked about the Quad, the other countries in the region that would benefit from an alliance with the United States, a stronger alliance with the United States. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, once upon a time, 20 years ago, when I was at Defense Ed, remember you used to interview me there?
Yes.
The one who was given the mantle of leadership in the region was Australia. Ang tawag nga sa kanya, sheriff of the U.S. But you can see what happened with Australia's changing leadership. They receded in importance insofar as the security and defense of the region is concerned. So what happened? Japan now became the anchor of that security and defense. And what happened? What other things happened? Inaakap nila ngayon ng India. If you'll notice, ang pangalan ng Pacific Command sa Hawaii is Pacific Command. Ngayon, it's called an Indo-Pacific Command. If you look at the geography, it is really trying to encircle China. So tama yung kutob ng China. Talagang ini-encircle siya.
Let me shift naman. What if it becomes a Joe Biden presidency? And we did see what happened before in 2016, just before Obama left the White House in the early months of President Duterte. We also have a very antagonistic relationship between the two. As in talagang kiskisan yung dalawa. If Joe Biden wins, what kind of a relationship can we expect between the U.S. president and the Philippine president?
Well, I think in the first year or so, depending on where the COVID is going in the U.S., Biden will be preoccupied with. I'm sorry. Biden will. Sorry, huh?
Okay. May away yata. Ma'am, may away yata dyan sa bahay niyo.
Sorry ha, nag-aaway yung apat na dogs. So, what was I saying? I said in the first year of Biden's presidency, during which time, we're moving towards a new leadership in 2022. He will be preoccupied, very, very preoccupied, dealing with stimulating the economy, getting back the economy into shape, and dealing with the COVID. So I think, Ed, malayong-layo sa isip niya yung tumawid ng Pacific Ocean at pakialaman tayo. During which period, magiging more robust ang Quad with the leadership of Prime Minister Suga.
Yes, ma'am. But on the other hand, I mean, the U.S. president does not really physically have to visit here for our relations to be impacted by a change in leadership. Like, for example, if there are other deals in the U.S. mill, like, for example, purchase of firearms, purchase of ammunition, and you're looking at a Democratic presidency, could that possibly be affected, like what happened in 2016, where when you had some arms sales put on hold because of human rights issues?
I don't think there will be any change. People are saying that the mill-to-mill relationships will change. Actually, because I'm a consultant at the visiting forces, hindi naman siya nag-change materially. Pareho pa din, no? Parang rhetoric na yun eh. So yung MILSA, yung EDCA, ganun pa din ang level of relationship. Did not change. The only thing that changed nung nag-withdraw si Duterte, but he backpedaled on that also.
Yes.
And they will have to deal with that and give him a fake measure because it seems like he would like to go back to the status quo ante where the VFA continues to be a leg of the mutual defense treaty.
So on the ground, it was actually status quo, like what we saw in Marawi. The U.S. was still involved in helping fight the battles in Marawi, at least on a logistical and technical point of view. They did not withdraw from supporting the Philippine troops.
Yeah, sana nga maisa publiko, no? Kasi internal pa lang yung document, yung ginawa naming assessment. talagang ang daming pluses ng RP-US relations. Kanya lang kasi sa media ang nag-dominate talaga yung indifference, hostility, etc. But the numbers are telling you differently. I wish that were made public yung assessment ng RP-US relations. And they're very good. They're very good.
And we would expect that to continue with the Trump presidency and not to have any sufficient difference if it's a Joe Biden presidency. Tama ho ba?
Yeah, and the Trump presidency, it will be made more robust because the Quad is looking for partners. And we are a natural partner because we are a defense ally of the U.S.
Okay, we are honored to have you with us, ma'am. Dr. Clarita Carlos of the University of the Philippines. Ma'am, thank you for joining us tonight. Ingat po kayo.
Thank you, Ed, for having me.
Best wishes po. Okay, exit polls in the United States show that half of the U.S. voters want to contain COVID-19 in the country, even if it hurts their economy. The results conducted by Edison Research goes against U.S. President Donald Trump's campaign of fully opening the U.S. economy amid the rise of COVID-19 infections. More than 9.4 million people in the U.S. have contracted the virus, while over 230,000 died due to COVID-19. Edison Research also reported that the economy, racial inequality, crime and safety, and healthcare policy are also the top concerns of voters today. The U.S. is set to declare its new key leaders soon through widespread mail-in balloting and early voting procedures. In 2 years, the Philippines is also set to hold its own national elections. How will the country execute the votation amid the continuing threat of COVID-19? Pampanga Congressman Mikey Arroyo has asked the Commission on Elections to consider postponing the 2022 elections. He says his constituents will hesitate to go out and vote for fear of contracting the virus. Malacanang opposes this, saying the move will lead to constitutional questions or constitutional challenges. The Constitution sets the terms of the President and the Vice President at only 6 years. And to give us their reaction on how things are shaping up in the U.S., we now talk to News 5 Editor-at-Large Manny Mogato and columnist Alex Magno. Gentlemen, good afternoon. Hi, sir. Good afternoon and long time no see.
Good afternoon.
Manny Mogs, I see you all the time.
Good afternoon, Alex. Long time no see.
Yes, sir. It's been a while. Sir, Professor Alex, saan ho kayo ngayon? Where are you based?
Could you repeat that?
Prof, saan kayo based ngayon, Professor Alex? Where are you now exactly?
Doing a lot of consulting.
No. Where are you physically? Where are you now?
I'm in my home, Quezon City.
Okay. Akala ko nasa US kayo eh.
Never.
Kasi naka-Amerikana kayo eh. Anyway, sir, well, let me start off with Sir Manny Mogs, let me start off with this. Yung announcement ni President Trump kanina, just a few less than an hour ago, he said he had won the elections kahit hindi pa tapos yung bilangan, and at the same time he's going to the Supreme Court to file a challenge dito sa eleksyon na ito. Implications po. Let's talk about implications. Anong ibig sabihin nun? Anong kahulugan nun sa atin?
Well, mahirap yan, Ed, kasi ang may shades of instability mangyayari, no? Well, anyway, it's still premature to declare victory when you have millions of votes na hindi mo na nabibilang. Especially mga mail-in votes na matagalan pa, siguro aabutin man lang next week yan. Sa dami nung bumoto. Kasi for the first time, 98 million Americans voted ahead of time. Diba? So, malaki talaga. I think this is the biggest turnout in any election in the U.S. history. Prof Alex, kayo po, ito nga, if Trump brings a challenge before the Supreme Court, that will probably delay the final declaration. How is that in terms of stability ng U.S. system? And also, my question din is this, if he declares himself the winner, how can he file a challenge with the Supreme Court?
Well, even if he does not, I think what we're seeing now is really the worst possible scenario for these elections. It's a tightly contested race where it's basically an open invitation to litigation. the Republicans are prepared to litigate every ballot or bring a case up to the Supreme Court, whichever. Although we don't know why they would do that. But we'll have to see over the few hours
Pero yun nga
as the count moves on.
the winner, the president's claiming to be the winner, yet he's filing litigation.
Kasi alam
So,
mo,
paano yun?
dun sa mga battleground states, sa Wisconsin, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Michigan, lamang si Trump ngayon, no? Sa bilangan. Pero ang hindi mo na may bilang, yung mga mail-in ballots na nakakonsentrate sa cities. Alam mo naman na si Biden ay malakas sa city. Si Trump malakas sa rural areas, no? So, pwedeng yung boto nung nasa city can overcome yung lead ni Trump sa mga rural areas. Kaya may chance na matalo si Trump dun sa tatlong battleground states. Pero tingin ko dun sa isa pang battleground state, yung Georgia, na malamang-lamang si President Trump, wala na siyang talo doon, no? Ang nakita kong resulta ngayon, yung Arizona na dating blue, dating red, naging blue. So, malaking change sa election system. Pero pagdating ng mapa nila, yung dating mapanalunan ng Democrat, yung pa rin ang mapanalunan ng Biden. At yung dating kay Trump na, except yung Arizona, nang nakuha nga ni Biden.
Pero
so,
ito nga po.
Yung tatlong areas na yon, yung Ohio, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, yun na tayo siguro mag-decide.
Pero ito nga po, when the sitting president questions the validity of an election, where does that leave you?
Well,
mahirap yan.
We've seen Trump naman for the last 4 years. Nauna yung bibig niya sa utak niya. So itong threat niya, hindi natin alam dahil he'll likely forget about it if he wins yung tinatawag na
if he wins the vote, the electoral vote.
States.
Pero
he's leading, by the way.
Opo, pero nga po pero nga, it will only matter, it will only be significant if he loses the actual electoral vote. Pero yun nga, in that case, if he loses the actual electoral vote and he refuses to recognize that, and he is the president, what happens next?
Alam mo, sinasabi na ni Trump yan bago pa mag-eleksyon na he will not recognize yung victory ni Biden pag natalo siya. So, merong crisis na mangyayari dyan, no? Ang tingin ko, yung military, no? U.S. military, ang gusto, decisive victory ang mangyayari dyan. Kung si Biden o si Trump, para walang problema. Pero kung may ganyang masyadong dikit ang laban, baka magkagulo yan. Alam mo naman yung mga Proud Boys, di ba?
Yeah, but those are fringe groups Like ito, for example, the military. I don't recall the U.S. military being involved in civilian politics in the United States. Well, at least not as much as ours. Our military has been.
Hindi, wala ka sila. Very professional yung military nila. Pero, alam mo, yung military nila, nag-aantay din ng order yan. Sinong susundin. Sino commander-in-chief, di ba?
O nga, pero nga, then you go back to the question, who is really the commander-in-chief? And that is, and if that is contested and contestable, where does that leave what used to be called the leader of the free state, the free world?
Yung malaking problema, kasi pag nagkagulo, can Trump order the military? Can he call to action the military to suppress violence in the street? No?
Di ba? Those are big questions, di ba?
Prof, susundin ba siya nung military? Yan kaya may problema.
Prof, kayo po, what do you think? Is that even a possibility? I mean, is that even on the horizon?
Palagay ko yung military involvement is about 2 or 3 steps away. No? the most imminent possibility, if Biden wins, which will be by just a few electoral votes, it will be the Republican Party that will basically intervene and ask Trump to leave office as constitutionally mandated.
And what if he
But at
does
the
not?
moment,
What if he does not? Given how Trump has been speaking in the last 4 years, what if he does not?
Isang tao lang naman si Trump, madaling bitbitin yan kahit malaki.
Spoken like a Filipino.
So, I think Trump is painting himself into a corner needlessly. He might still win this election. That is still a distinct possibility. We're down to 3 states. Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. And in all these 3 states, he's actually leading. Although, yun nga, hindi pa nabibilang yung mga
mail-in votes.
Mail-in ballots.
Marami yun, sir.
Which would tend to be heavily Democrat.
And yung Congress sa kontrol na ng Democrat eh.
And if it comes to a Congress vote, kasi that's one option under the 12th Amendment. If it comes to a Congress vote, then baka may advantage si Biden doon. Baka lang.
Oo, kasi nakontrol na ng Democrat eh. Natalo yung mga Republicans.
Actually, so far, yung election just replicated yung 2016 map. No?
Yeah.
Ang nagbago lang yung Arizona.
Arizona lang,
Democratic.
yes. That's true. Okay. Maraming salamat po, Professor Alex Magno. Good to see you, sir, again. It's been a long time since we last saw you. And Manny Mogs, ang ating editor at large, I always see you.
Yeah. Mamaya, kita tayo.
Okay, ingat parate, ingat kayo parate, at ingat sa pating. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. We would like to acknowledge the help of Bing Cardenas Brannigan in Washington, D.C. Stay tuned here in One News, specifically on the big story and the Chiefs for the latest in the U.S. elections. For more updates, visit News 5, The Philippine Star, and Business World Online. Visit our website, onenews.ph, for more in-depth analysis. You can also catch One News on the Signal Play app. Register for a free account now at www.signalplay.com and stream One News live anytime, anywhere. I'm Ed Lingao. We are One News.